2 days later, Logpose's magnetic force was finally full and Lafitte returned to the ship. One of the directions pointed by the single arrow Logpose is same as one of the directions pointed by the 3 arrows Logpose, which is undoubtedly good news for Ross. The previous robbery was not in vain, and the future routes will become flexible. Let's first go to Alpha Port. Ross gave his instructions to Lafitte. It's very difficult to lock a pirate in West Blue, but on the Grand Line, every pirate needs to stay on the island to record and store the magnetic force, and their route is limited to a large part. With the speed of Ghost Shadow ship, it's much easier to catch up with a pirate ship. Okay, Captain. Lafitte responded by putting the old single arrow Logpose in his pocket and looking at the 3 arrows Logpose and sea map to navigate the Ghost Shadow ship. 7 days later, Ghost Shadow ship arrived at the next island. It took only 2 days to store the magnetic force and then they set sail again. It took them 5 days to reach another island. Ghost Shadow ship's speed advantage combined with Lafitte, a navigator, was fully utilized. It took only 20 days to cross 3 islands and arrive at Port Alpha. Ghost Shadow ship practice room. Bang, bang, bang. Continuous bang sound was heard. Ross's hands are clenched into fists, as if wearing thin black gloves, punching one punch after another on a piece of square steel. Dents continuously appeared on the steel. In his fight with Dalmatian, although he did not use armament hockey, he was always observing Dalmatian's armament hockey until the end of battle. Fights have always been the most effective way to develop human potential in this world. After only a few days with Dalmatian's battle, Ross completely mastered armament hockey hardening. Distortion. Fist. In the constant swing of his fist, Ross's eyes suddenly flashed and his heart raced. He suddenly stimulated the power of distortion, pouring it into his fist and gave a fierce blow. Bang. Under Ross's fist, the front of the square steel showed a spiral distortion crack. If Ross had not withdrawn his ability quickly, the whole steel might have broken up. Looking at the square steel, Ross's brows slightly wrinkled. He looked down at his fist and saw that the armament hockey attached to his fist had collapsed. Can't hockey be perfectly integrated with fruit power? After mastering armament hockey hardening, Ross's next practice direction is to combine armament hockey with his devil fruit power. Devil Fruit's ability and armament hockey are not two conflicting abilities, they can be perfectly integrated with each other through control. Doflamingo's line, Luffy's rubber, which can be directly attached to armament hockey, Whitebear's tremor fruit, Gura Gura no Mi, can hit a Kainu with one blow, apparently with armament hockey in it. Otherwise, Logia user can use elementalization to filter out the damage from the shock and only accepts the ordinary punch of armament hockey, which is not serious enough to vomit blood on the ground. However, devil fruit such as distortion and earthquake is obviously different from the solid paramecia such as wire and rubber. The two devil fruit abilities of wire and rubber can be almost perfectly superimposed with armament hockey and have strong attack power. Distortion and tremor fruit, Gura Gura no Mi, are already very aggressive and both of these abilities belong to non-physical abilities. So armament hockey is only used as an auxiliary effect and is mixed into the ability. The first two can be called a combination, while the latter two are additional. It's almost impossible for Logia and Paramecia to avoid armament hockey attacks. If the power of distortion can be attached to the characteristics of armament hockey, then it will be something different. Because of this, the combination of earthquake and hockey or distortion in hockey is obviously much more difficult than wire or rubber hockey combination. Ross has been trying for more than 10 days, but he cannot attach armament hockey to his distortion fruit capability. Even to that extent, when Ross exploded out with the power of distortions, the armament hockey hardening on his fist could not be maintained as it would be affected by the power of distortions and collapse. Whitebeard is able to attach hockey to his vibration, which means that there is a way to attach hockey to his devil fruit abilities. Ross looked at his fist and his eyes glittered. Now that someone could do it, it showed that the road was feasible. He couldn't do it now because his armament hockey was not strong enough and his control of armament hockey and fruit ability is slightly inadequate. Maybe his control and development of distortion fruit will surpass Whitebeard in the future, but now he is still far from Whitebeard, who stands at the top of this world. Just as Ross was about to continue his exercise, a knock on the door came from outside, followed by Robin's voice. "Captain Ross, we have reached Alpha Port, I see." After the Ghost Shadow ship docked in Port Alpha, Robin and Ross went to the island and split up to collect information about the Iron Wall pirates. At the same time, in the corner that nobody noticed, a world government intelligence member in plain clothes took out a Den Den Mushi and reported solemnly to the other side. Reporting: the ghost hand pirates have appeared on Port Alpha. Continue monitoring. On the other side, the chief of the intelligence department, after hearing reports from his subordinate, silently ordered him to continue monitoring and quickly transferred the intelligence to the top. At the same time, this intelligence was also handed over to the Marine headquarters. As a result of the extremely wicked impact of the Ross incident, not only Marine headquarters but also the top management of the world government have been eyeing the ghost hand pirates. Ordinary Marine branches obviously can't deal with Ross and the ghost hand pirates. At least, a headquarters vice admiral must sit on the island that they are arriving. And to be safe, 2 headquarters vice admirals should be dispatched and more than 3 battleships should be led. Should headquarters send battleships and vice admiral? No, I suggest leaving it to CP9 to deal with secretly. Port of Alpha, if I remember correctly, there are 2 more islands on this route, which is Crocodile's territory. Is that right? In that case, it would be possible to postpone the deployment of troops. It would be a better choice for Crocodile, who had just signed the Shichibukai Treaty, to deal with the ghost hand pirates than for Marine to send out heavy troops to encircle and suppress the ghost hand pirates. If the Crocodile can kill the pirates, then his Shichibukai's position will remain fixed. If Crocodile is killed, then his position on Shichibukai is obviously not enough to balance the Grand Line. They can just change the members to avoid big trouble in the future. Alcaria. Inside a luxurious building, in a room on the top floor, Crocodile was sitting on the sofa, holding a cigar and watching the Den Den Mushi, which he had just hung up, and he smirked and snorted. Ghost hand pirates, they are really taking me for a casual squad. I don't have time to deal with your troubles for you. He is not interested in the ghost hand pirates. As for the ghost pirates, who seems to be hunting other pirates, he did not care much either. He had been to the New World and he returned. He even challenged Whitebeard. Although he lost miserably, a pirate with a bounty of 200 million berries is undoubtedly not in his eyes. Just as Crocodile put the Den Den Mushi back in his pocket, a knock on the door was heard and a man with his chin covered came in. The man with his jaw covered came in the front of Crocodile with a respectful look and whispered, "Mr. Crocodile, Iron Wall pirates appeared in Alpha Port 10 days ago. They seem to be coming here on their own." "Huh? After looking for them for more than a month, I didn't expect them to come here on their own." Crocodile's indifferent eyes flashed with a ray of light. He was more concerned about the Iron Wall pirates than about Ghost Hands pirates, because Iron Wall pirates had what he needed. Previous efforts to deal with the Iron Wall pirates were also aimed at robbing him of what he needed. As a result, he was escaped by his opponent. "Keep an eye on the Iron Wall pirates and report to me as soon as they appear." Alpha Port. Whether it is Ross, Robin, or Lafitte, they are very good at acquiring information. In a single day, they collected all the information that Ross needed. The Iron Wall pirates with a bounty of 180 million berries left Alpha Port 10 days ago. Although their exact route is unknown, Robin has got an important intelligence. Apparently, the Iron Wall pirates fought Crocodile, one of the 7 warlords of the sea. The 2 sides had once fought in a certain place in the sea and Iron Wall pirates were defeated, but the captain and important cadres escaped. And, after appearing in Alpha Port, the Iron Wall pirates inquired about Crocodile in the underground world. That is to say, the purpose of Iron Wall pirates is probably to go and fight Crocodile. Ross listened to Robin's intelligence and his eyes flashed with a whisper of a thought. Crocodile has only recently become one of the 7 warlords of the sea with a bounty of only 81 million berries, but his strength cannot be measured by this bounty. He is a Logia devil fruit user. Even with obvious weaknesses, he can run rampant in the first half of the Grand Line without hockey. But, compared to the time when Luffy went out to sea, Crocodile is much younger. Even the Baroque work agency has not yet been formed and he has not gone to Alabasta. His reputation is not high, even though many pirates with the bounty up to 170 million berries has suffered in his hands. But after 10 years, the barrier fruit will be eaten by someone else, so the Iron Wall pirates were probably completely destroyed by Crocodile. My prey can't be taken away by others, even if that someone is a Shichibukai. Ross's eyes flashed. Although it seems that it will cause him some trouble with Crocodile, he can't let go of the first killing reward of the pirate with over 100 million rewards. By killing Iron Wall pirates, he will get 1 free talent point and the gravity distortion branch can be activated. After a little thought, Ross calmly said, "Since this Iron Wall pirates are going to find Crocodile, then we just have to find the location of Crocodile." "Robin, did you collect the intelligence on Crocodile?" Crocodile has stayed in Alcaria for the last month. Robin nodded, consistently capable and reassuring. She is left arm of Ross. After reporting the information on Crocodile, Robin's eyes flashed with thought and she said to Ross, "Shichibukai is a pirate that can plunder and loot with the government permission. When we go towards Crocodile, the government will probably take this opportunity to deal with us. There is such a possibility, but Crocodile is not a person who will listen to the world government. It is unlikely that he will cooperate with the Marines. Even if he really comes after us, then let's let him." Ross's gaze is flat. Even if he was the original 10-year-later Crocodile, Ross was not afraid of him, not to mention that he has just become a Shichibukai. If he comes after him, he would just deal with him. Although the bounty of 81 million berries is a bit low, Shichibukai may have a special bonus. Captain. While Ross and Robin were talking, Lafitte also returned with the intelligence, carrying an umbrella-handle-shaped mahogany cane in one hand, and courteous said, "The information you need has been collected. The Iron Wall pirates is on their way to Alcaria. They should not have reached there yet." Ross turned to look at Lafitte and said, "It is aligned with the information Robin and I collected, but you seem to have collected more accurate intelligence." "I am very honored." Lafitte smiled and flickered his wrist and took out an eternal pose and said, "Iron Wall pirates bought an eternal pose to Alcaria in the underground world, and I also got one." "Good job." Ross looked at the eternal pose in Lafitte's hands and nodded. With an eternal pose, he could reach Alcaria without having to go through the islands one by one, or even wait for the magnetic field to be fully stored in Alpha Port. After basically determining the route of Iron Wall pirates, Ross and Lafitte returned to the ship and hung up full sails and headed for Alcaria at full speed with the fastest Ghost Shadow ship. Ordinary cargo ships will take at least 15 days to reach there, but the Ghost Shadow ship reached their destination in 6.5 days. Finally reached. Standing in front of the deck of the Ghost Shadow ship and looking at the large island in the distance, Ross took a deep breath. He didn't want Iron Wall pirates to be robbed of their heads by Crocodile. If that's the case, he might have to take Crocodile head to vent his anger. Buzz. Looking at Alcaria, Ross stood on the deck and suddenly raised his right hand and shook the empty space below. Under Ross's control, the power of distortion quickly spread into the sea, stirring a wave and directly carrying the Ghost Shadow ship to the direction of Alcaria. Ross now has the ability to make waves and accelerate the ship without damaging the hull, but the stamina cost is not small, so he rarely does it. Crash. The Ghost Shadow ship, which was extremely fast, left a white line on the sea, and it took only 2 minutes to cross the 10-minute journey. As soon as he arrived on the shore, Ross converges and Lafitte and Robin quickly decelerate the Ghost Shadow ship, and it was finally docked on the shore of Alcaria. "I hope it's not too late. If my prey is robbed, then pray, Crocodile." Ross jumped and set foot on the island. His eyes were calm and indifferent. Alcaria Island. This is a large island, where the kingdom of Alcaria sits. This country is not a country of pirates, but one of the 170 subordinates allies affiliated with world government. On a street, on the roof of a building, Ross and Lafitte stood looking at a group of people at the end of the street. There is no doubt that it was Iron Wall pirates that Ross was eyeing. Ross asked Robin to stay with the ship and boarded the island with Lafitte, looking for the Iron Wall pirates, and the Iron Wall pirates were also searching for Crocodile. In this search, Ross and Lafitte quickly discovered the Iron Wall pirates and also found their large force. Hanging bounty of 180 million berries, Iron Wall Rivero, and hanging bounty 70 million berries wrestler Hanu, their main members are here. Lafitte turned to look at Ross. "Do you want to go, Captain?" "Naturally." Ross stood on the edge of the roof, looking at the Iron Wall pirates members gathering not far from the street below, as if watching a group of monsters who provide experience. Whiz. The next moment, Ross jumped from the roof and landed on the street, straight in the direction of the Iron Wall pirates. The people of Iron Wall pirates were heading in the direction of Ross. Many people in the street recognized the Iron Wall pirates and hid from them in fear. "That is, Iron Wall pirates. Hey, is that Iron Wall pirates that destroyed 13 towns? It's said that their total bounty is more than 300 million berries. Why did they come here?" The captain of Iron Wall pirates is a supernova with a bounty of 180 million berries. The total bounty of these pirate force is 300 million berries, which undoubtedly means that they have a very prestigious reputation in the first half of the Grand Line. However, as Ross leapt from the roof and headed in the direction of Iron Wall pirates, countless breathing sounds soon came around. "No, that man looks a bit like, yes, it's Ghost Hand Ross." Although many of the people present had not read the newspaper about Ross, they had more or less heard about it, but even so, a big pirate with a bounty of 200 million berries appeared in the street. Everyone still panicked and retreated. I heard that he has never looted civilians. Who knows this kind of thing? But there seems to be some movement there. It seems to be Iron Wall pirates. Someone turned to look at the other side of the street and his pupils shrank violently and there was a shudder in his heart. Iron Wall pirates. Although there was no such thing as pirates in the limelight, the slaughtering of 13 towns was still astounding and horrifying, and more importantly, the Iron Wall pirates and the ghost hand Ross appeared on the same street. Coincidence? No. If you remember correctly, the ghost hand pirates seems to hunt other pirates. Someone thought of this and couldn't help but stagnate as a terrifying and horrible thought appeared in his heart. Would the ghost hand pirates collide with the Iron Wall pirates here? With countless stares of shock, nervousness, or fear, the crowd disappeared in the street between Ross and Iron Wall pirates. The Iron Wall pirates saw Ross and stopped one by one. Ghost hand, Ross. Standing there, Captain Rivero of Iron Wall pirates looked at Ross across the street, squinting slightly and said, "After causing such big movement, you still dared to show up so casually?" "No, it's not a casual appearance, but a show for you. Hanging bounty of 180 million berries, Iron Wall Rivero, I heard you are strong." Ross took 2 more steps forward, stopping only 10 meters away from the Iron Wall pirates. Rivero slightly raised his mouth and said to Ross, "You've beaten up an entire marine branch and your strength is good, but it's not wise to block my way. I'm looking for someone to settle accounts and I don't have time to play with you." "Really?" Ross gently lifted his foot and said, "I really want to play a game with you. Only one person can survive the game." Bang! Ross's raised foot slammed down and the earth in front of him slammed into a distortion, showing a wave of terrifying ripples, rolling toward the mighty crowd of Iron Wall pirates. "It seems that you are tired of living." Rivero's face turned cold in an instant. He is famous for exacting vengeance. Otherwise, he would not put together a large force and came here to fight Crocodile. Anyone who dares to provoke him has been sent to hell by him. Protection. Barrier. His forefinger and middle finger were curved and folded together. A transparent glass barrier appeared in the middle of the street, inserting into the underground fiercely. Bang! The power of distortion surged along with the earth and hit the barrier, letting the glassy barrier suddenly show a strange distortion and depression. For the first time, Rivero met a person who could shake his barrier and his eyes flashed, but he didn't panic and raised his hand and pushed forward. Barrier impact. The barrier that was distorted and bent like rubber bounced back into the original shape and a repulsive force bursts into the front, colliding with the power of distortion released by Ross. Bang long. Suddenly, the earth in front of the barrier cracked and spread to both sides. Instantly, a deep ravine about 10 meters wide was split and the ground in front of Ross was all fragmented. It was similar to the aftermath of a magnitude 10 earthquake. The buildings on both sides of the street were completely smashed in the aftermath of the attack and the countless people were shocked. Is it still human? Without even moving, they destroyed a large street and 2 buildings. This scene falls in the eyes of many people. They were undoubtedly amazed by them and they were shocked. Can't it be destroyed? Ross looked at the barrier that was deformed by the power of distortion, but it suddenly bounced back to its original shape. His eyes were calm and he did not show any surprise. Devil Fruit's ability, in many cases, is also restrained. For example, the Surgeon Fruit can almost crush the Barrier Fruit, making the barrier completely obsolete, but if a Zone Fruit faces the Barrier Fruit, it can't do anything. A single punch that can destroy a town will not be able to break this small barrier. And his Distortion Fruit works against the Barrier Fruit. Although it can't destroy the barrier, it can deform the barrier like rubber. It really scared me. You are the first person who can shake my barrier. But, that's it. Rivero looked at Ross indifferently and his eyes flashed with ferocity as his hands raised and he waved violently. Barrier impact. Whoosh! The 2-sided barrier appeared silently in the position where Rivero's hands were closed in the middle, sandwiching Ross in the middle and squeezing toward the center at a very fast speed, intending to squeeze Ross into a meat paste. Faced with the incoming 2-sided barrier, Ross raised his hand and pressed it on both sides. Buzz. Under the influence of the power of distortion, the glass barrier with almost unbreakable characteristics instantly distorted like dough. Distortion Fruit and Barrier Fruit, regardless of the relationship between the two, their powers are purely based on the degree of development of the fruit. If barrier fruit development is strong enough, it can withstand the power of the distortion fruit, and if distortion fruit is stronger, it can naturally distort the barrier. In terms of fruit development, how can a single Rivero be comparable to Ross, who has been working hard since he acquired the distortion fruit? That devil fruit is very good, unfortunately, its development is too poor. After the barrier was forcibly torn apart, Ross rushed straight toward Rivero, and in a single moment, he was already in front of Rivero. Rivero was shocked and did not hesitate to retreat to the rear. Although he was cruel and sly, he was not a fool. Since Ross could make dough out of his barrier, he could probably make dough out of him. Rivero raised his hands and shouted angrily as he retraced toward the rear. Barrier ability hammer. The fluid-like barrier emerged from his palm and turned into a glass-like giant hammer that hammered down on Ross under his control. Ross was expressionless, raised his hand and punched towards the sky. Bang! His fist collided with the barrier hammer and a loud sound broke out in an instant. An airwave centered on the impact site rippled in all directions. Ordinary people who have retreated or fled, even outside a few streets, are struck by the loud sound which left their ears ringing, and even members of Iron Wall pirates are stunned. How can it be? That guy actually distorted Boss's barrier and also caught the barrier hammer. Many Iron Wall pirates watched the brief confrontation between Ross and Rivero, and they were shocked. Since they followed Rivero, they have never seen Rivero's barrier destroyed. Whether it's a powerful swordsman, a spring fruit man, or vice admiral of the Marine branch, all of them are helpless in front of Rivero's barrier. Not to mention that when a distortion is formed on the barrier disappeared. Ghost Hand Ross. No wonder he's called Ghost Hand. He must be quite strong. Can those hands break Captain's barrier? Iron Pirate's deputy captain, wrestler Hanu, looked at Ross and Rivero's battle and suddenly yelled at his subordinates. Aim at Ghost Hand Ross. They are ferocious pirates that run across the sea. There is no such thing as fighting alone. When confronted with an enemy, it is natural to kill the enemy by all means. Under Hanu's order, the Iron Wall pirates' crew members who were immersed in the fight woke up and picked up their weapons, some pulling out swords and some pulling out the guns. It was then that they heard a voice coming from the building next to them. Haha, please be quiet and don't disturb our captain's battle. Lafitte was sitting on the sign of a store, holding a mahogany cane with a strange smile on his face, looking down at the Iron Wall pirates. With a bounty of 80 million berries, in the Ghost Hand pirates, he is currently second only to Ross, so his name is quite famous. Demon Sheriff, Lafitte. Hanu recognized Lafitte and his face sank in an instant. He shook his arms. His muscles relaxed and tightened. He showed a ferocious look and said, "How about wrestling?" Lafitte, Hanu, and other members of Iron Wall pirates on this side, while Ross and Rivero's battle on the other side, have shown a nearly one-sided situation. Whiz! Ross's figure flickered as he came to Rivero's side. His right hand clenched into a fist and he punched Rivero's head. Rivero did not hesitate to launch the barrier fruit ability, creating a small barrier between his face and Ross's fist. However, Ross's fist hit the barrier and the direct distortion caused the small barrier to hollow out like a dough, and his fist hit Rivero's face. Gotcha! Rivero's mouth was bleeding and he spits out two of his teeth and his right face was swollen, which was the result of a barrier that counteracted most of Ross's strength, otherwise he would have been killed. Bastard, die! Rivero was beaten by Ross and lost several teeth. His eyes were bloodshot and he was furious. He screamed as his hands slammed toward Ross. Instantly, numerous fluid-like objects emerged from the void, which did not form a barrier, but they were separately transformed into a glass-shaped sword, suspended in the air, which then attacked Ross frantically. Because the toughness of the barrier is almost impossible to break, even the king punch, which can smash an entire kingdom, could not shake this barrier, so the sharp blades formed from this abilities needs no other words. However, in front of Ross's distortion fruit, this toughness doesn't exist, as the development of his fruit is far ahead of barrier fruit. Crash! Ross put his hands out and grabbed them. He pulled the swords together and then smashed them into a glass ball. He threw it out with his backhand and ripped the remaining swords away. Then Ross took a step and he rushed forward again towards Rivero. His right hand was clenched into a fist as he punched it out. Bang! Although Rivero once again created a barrier between Ross's fist and his chest, the barrier was still turned into a dough under the influence of the power of distortion. It was deformed by the distortion power and Ross's fist collapsed on his chest. Rivero flew backward and the ribs on his chest made broken sounds as blood gushed out of his mouth. Even if the barrier counteracts most of his strength, his ribs were almost broken by the blow. I take back what I just said, you have developed this fruit well. It's just that you're not as strong as I am. Ross spoke calmly to Rivero, who had vomited blood and flew backward. Looking at Rivero's tactics today, it's much better than the green-haired guy 10 years later. The bounty of 180 million berries looks a little lower to Ross. Rivero's back slammed into the distant building, but at the moment of touching the building, a barrier appeared between his body and the building, blocking most of his impact. His body fell to the ground and he covered his chest with a violent cough. You are the first person to hurt me. Rivero raised his head and stared at Ross with palpitating, cold eyes and said in a chilly voice, but if you want my head, you have to have the courage to bet your life on it. Buzz. He lifted his legs and stepped forward. The fluid barrier emerged from beneath his feet and spread rapidly. He pushed the size of the barrier he was currently able to stimulate to the limit. Almost instantaneously, a giant barrier of about 3 meters high appeared in the field and the glassy barrier wrapped Rivero's body. Looking at this scene, Ross narrowed his eyes. Oh? He probably knows why Crocodile couldn't kill Iron Wall Rivero before. Bang! Rivero took a step forward, stepping on the ground with a glass-shaped enclosure made up of barriers and creating an inch-long crack on the ground. He looked like an all-metal machine armor fighting god. This is my absolute defense. Rivero's voice came out of the inside of the barrier and although it became a little weak, it still entered Ross's ear clearly. So, despair. With a fierce smile on his face, he rushed towards Ross as his huge fist was wrapped in a barrier. He hammered towards Ross's head, wrapped in terrifying momentum and tried to beat Ross into a bunch of meat pies. Ross looked at the fallen fist, his eyebrows gradually wrinkled and he retreated to the rear. What's wrong? Didn't you have a good fight just now? Rivero grinned fiercely and continued to chase Ross, punching continuously, while Ross kept avoiding his fists and showing a slight unwillingness. Chop! Rivero pushed Ross back with his fist and closed his hands together. The barrier flowed into a glass sword, which fell sharply at Ross. Ross took a step toward the side and the sword fell into the street creating a 10-meter wide crack in the street instantly splashing gravel and mud. Not far away, members of Iron Wall Pirates, who were fighting Lafitte, saw Rivero's ultimate ability that forced Ross to retreat and their confidence boosted. That Captain's absolute defense. No one has ever been able to destroy it and it has crushed all enemies. Many pirates were amazed. Once Rivero used this trick to defeat the Marine fleet led by a branch vice admiral, and there was no resistance. On the field, Rivero swung a sword that cut off a house on one side and walked to Ross with a mighty grin. What's wrong? He muttered. Do you feel despair? With a cruel grim expression, he controlled the clothes of the barrier and raised the transparent sword, intending to end the battle quickly. But it was at this time that Ross spoke up. It's a big loss. Did you finally realize that it was a mistake to provoke Iron Wall Rivero? Rivero held a high-spirited posture and looked at Ross, coldly saying, unfortunately, it's too late. The moment his voice fell, he turned his power to the utmost, wrapping the sword with unprecedented terrifying power and boldly split against Ross. It's really a big loss this time. Looking at the power of Rivero's sword, Ross repeated what he had said before. He closed his eyes slowly and clenched his fingers into fists that trembled slightly. Such strength and he only have a bounty of 180 million berries, it is too bad. Ross's fist swayed upwards and slammed at the sword in Rivero's hand. The strength of this Rivero is enough for him to have a bounty of 300 million berries, but his actual bounty is only 180 million berries, 2 grades lower. Ross was angry. After bending the sword of the barrier, he grabbed it with his back hand and pulled it violently. He pulled the whole barrier together with Rivero and smashed it with one punch. Bang! The punch hit the glass like barrier and water like ripples appeared on it. The entire barrier was made into a paste by the power of distortion that broke out from Ross. Bang! Ross raised his foot and kicked Rivero's barrier armor, slamming it into the side of a building. Whiz! Ross disappeared and appeared in front of Rivero, his fist slamming down and hitting the pasty armor that had not yet recovered. Like the crisp sound of glass breaking, the barrier bursts directly from the center. The power of distortion falls on Rivero's body through the barrier, causing him to spurt blood from his mouth and his ribs broke. After the series of attacks, he couldn't react at all and his face was filled with horror and fear. All the barriers disappeared instantly and Rivero's body fell on the ruined streets. The wrestler Hanu was expressionless. Members of Iron Wall Pirates, too, were expressionless and there was no noise in the air. Lafitte also stared for a moment, then gently smiled while reaching up and lifting his hat. Cough. Cough. Rivero was still alive. He coughed twice and tried to get up, but the severe pain in his chest made him unable to even flip his body. Ross walked toward Rivero, step by step to his side, stepping on his chest and saying, "Why is there a bounty of only 180 million berries?" Cough. Cough. Rivero vomited blood violently, blood spilled from his nose and mouth. He looked at Ross's face and listened to Ross's inexplicable words. Fear spread in his heart. What is this man talking about? Is he a madman? But how can a madman have such strength? Your strength, your bounty should be a lot higher, even if it was 20 million higher. Ross spoke to himself. Listening to Ross, Rivero's inner fear spread and gradually occupied his whole heart. He suddenly coughed violently and said to Ross, Don't kill me, if you want money, I have many precious things here." Ross looked at him without any emotions. Rivero cried, No, I have ancient weapons, maps." His eyes were full of fear. Maybe he would not fear a cruel pirate, but there is a madman in front of him who easily defeated him and said things he didn't understand at all. He didn't have the pride to wait for death after losing. Rivero reluctantly raised his arm, reached into his clothes, and pulled out a very old, somewhat tattered drawing. "Look, the ancient weapons, you want what's there." Looking at this scene, Ross showed a strange look for the first time. Ancient weapons. It is rumored that the three ancient weapons that existed before the establishment of the world government, Uranus, Sea King Poseidon, and Pluton. The Pluton is a ship that can destroy an island and Sea King Poseidon is a mermaid princess who can communicate and command all sea kings in the sea. As for Uranus, it is still unknown. Ross reached out, took the old map from Rivero and slowly opened it, but with only one look, his eyes showed a strange look. Ancient weapon, map of Sea King Poseidon? Yes, it is. Rivero responded with a tremor. Ross went on looking blankly. Sneer. The power of distortion in Ross's body was activated, ripping the old map into numerous fragments in an instant and scattering everywhere. Looking at this scene, Rivero was stunned. That is the map of ancient weapons. Once it's out there, there will be countless pirates who would want this. Crocodile found him just for this map and he wanted to kill Crocodile because Crocodile knows he has this map. But such a precious thing was actually destroyed by Ross. Is he really a madman? Stupid. Ross's expressionless said before using the power of distortion and without any blood spilling. Rivero's body is silently separated. Looking at the fragmented body with a trace of despair on his face, Ross spoke in a voice that only he could hear. My eyes have the ability to understand all the truth in this world. The mermaid princess Shirahoshi, who lives in the Fisherman's Island, is the ancient weapon, Sea King Poseidon. As for this treasure map, it may be a graffiti that the ancients people used to paint hundreds of years ago. I am afraid I don't know how many people have been turned around by it. When they search for it they die without finding any trace of ancient weapons. They don't know the truth. Hanging bounty of 180 million berries, Iron Wall, Rivero, has been killed, receiving a reward of 80 talent proficiency points and 1 free talent point. The familiar system sounded in his ear and Ross, who had previously been annoyed that Iron Wall Rivero's reward did not match his strength, finally shook his head. The level of bounty is undoubtedly affecting the level of reward. The bounty orders of this world are not something that is sent out casually, but it will be based on the degree of harm caused by someone. Then that person will be discussed by the government and marine at various levels before the final result. Perhaps a pirate with a bounty of 150 million berries may not be able to win against a pirate with a bounty of 180 million berries, but the bounty of tens of millions or billions of berries is obviously incomparable. The bounty may not represent strength, but to a certain extent, there are still standards of strength in it. Naturally. Apart from Shichibukai's 7 Warlords of the Sea bounty that was fixed at the time of signing the agreement, Ross also thought about whether Shichibukai would have a special reward, but the system did not give him an answer. Now, gravity distortion can be activated. Ross's face reappeared with a smile. In fact, he also considered his ability to develop gravity distortion, but he could not even touch the edge of gravity. Perhaps without the talent system, distortion fruit development limit would have been same as tremor fruit. Gura Gura no Mi. Of Whitebeard. The tremor fruit can only produce pure material distortion effect, which is the limit of the world. After all, it is difficult to shatter space even with the Whitebeard's strength. On the other side, just when Ross killed Rivero, Lafitte took advantage of the distraction moment of Hanu, the wrestler, to precisely pierce the red stick into the heart of his opponent. Lafitte is stronger than Hanu. Even in the face of a group of pirates, he is more skillful. When the pirates are distracted, he will naturally not engage in heroism, but seize the opportunity to quickly kill his opponents. Iron Wall pirates collapsed after Hanu fell to the ground. Ross didn't rush to count his harvest. Instead, he turned to look at Lafitte's direction. After jumping, he waved his hand and shattered the ground, instantly smashing 7 or 8 pirates. Kill them all. Ross seldom kills ordinary marine soldiers who only attacked him solely on command. He is not a murderous butcher, but for pirates that slaughtered dozens of towns, Ross's heart has no fluctuations. Yes, Captain. Lafitte would not have any objection to harvesting life. Smiling in the street, Lafitte sent a pirate from Iron Wall pirates to hell. Iron Wall pirates' strongest captain and vice-captain have been killed, and other pirates that have a bounty of 10 or 20 million berries are not their opponents, and they were all killed. Clench. Ross's happy spring pierced the heart of the last pirate. Should we find the rest of Iron Wall pirates and kill them? Watching the last pirate fall, Lafitte smiles at Ross and asks, "Let Marine do the washing." Ross shook his head as his purpose was achieved and the pirates that were killed at the scene was already handy. As for continuing to chase the Iron Wall pirates, it is not his job. Happy Spring was pulled out and the bloodstains were shaken off. Ross put his sword in the scabbard and decided to call Lafitte back. However, at this time, he suddenly looked at the street on one side. Patter. He doesn't know when, but there was sand on the street over there, which was carried by the wind and blown from unknown places. At the next moment, a dark shadow appeared from the deep part of the street, which was slowly coming towards his direction. He wore a gray fur coat with a cigar in his mouth and a scar across his cheek beneath his eyes. 7 warlords of the sea, Crocodile. So I was late, a group of unfavorable guys. Crocodile walked up to the street and looked at the tragic scenery on the street. The extinction of the Iron Wall pirates did not enter his eyes. After a sweep, his eyes fell on Ross. Iron Wall pirates came to the Crocodile to fight him, so naturally, they are not going to anchor their ship on the port, and like the Ghost Shadow ship, they docked their ship on the edge of Alcaria and sneaked into the island. By the time Crocodile's men found Iron Wall pirates, Ross had already fought with Iron Wall pirates, and when Crocodile heard the news, he immediately came here, but he was still a step late. The battle between the Ghost Hands pirates and Iron Wall pirates ended much faster than he expected. 7 warlords of the sea, Sand Crocodile, what are you doing here? Ross looked at Crocodile and asked in a quiet tone. Crocodile indifferently looked at Ross. At the end of the cigar in his mouth, a thin wisp of smoke drifted upward, forming a silk thread and escaping over his head. Not far away, besides Iron Wall Rivero's body, sand quietly poured into his clothes, rolled up and explored inside and outside. No. Crocodile looked at Ross and his gaze gradually became cold. He knew about the ancient weapon map. Rivero would definitely not place it anywhere else and will carry it on himself. After all, his name was Iron Wall, which was supposed to be never broken. And Rivero has nothing now. The map, it was taken away by you. Crocodile stared at Ross and said in an indifferent voice, "No wonder you're still bold in your current situation. You also want that power." Ross heard Crocodile's words and his eyes showed a glimmer of light in them. No wonder Crocodile would attack Iron Wall pirates. No wonder Iron Wall pirates would come to his door again. Neither side wanted to let the news out. Unfortunately, the map was fake. If it was a map of Pluto and Uranus, it may have been true. But it can't be true about the Sea King Poseidon. Moreover, Crocodile went to Alabaston a few years later to acquire the ancient weapons Pluton, which clearly proved that. You mean that fake map? It's been ripped off by me. Crocodile narrowed his eyes and showed a dangerous expression. To deceive him, he should make up a better reason than that, destroying the map. Even fools won't believe it. The government recently told me to take away your head. I didn't intend to pay any attention to it. I didn't expect you to come to my place and take what you shouldn't take. His tone became cold and indifferent, as if he were speaking to a dead man. Ancient weapons are something that the more people know, the more accidents will occur. It doesn't matter if Ross has the map or not. The outcome is already decided and he is doomed to die here. Rustle, at Crocodile's feet, sand spreads out constantly, and the broken earth is gradually transformed into fine sand under the influence of his ability. Looking at the hostile and murderous crocodile, Ross's eyes were calm. He could completely guess Crocodile's inner thoughts, but he would not explain his own words. He had already said the truth and it was the other side's business to believe it or not. He will not bother to explain the qualification of ancient weapons. You can defeat the Marines and destroy Iron Wall pirates. You are very strong, but I am not the idiots of the government and Marines. Crocodile slowly walked toward Ross. The place where he passed was covered with a layer of sand. Just as his voice fell, his eyes flashed as he suddenly moved forward and his right arm turned into sand attacking Ross. Barjan, crescent-shaped sand dune. A crescent-shaped blade of sand appeared with the swing of his arm and swept towards Ross. The blade of sand contains a dangerous atmosphere. It will not split the human body, but it will drain all the living things it touches. In the face of this move, Ross's response is also very simple. His 5 fingers clenched into a fist as he punched the coming attack. Distortion fist. Bang! Ross's punch hits the crescent-shaped sand blade and the sand blade instantly bursts apart. Before the dry force of the sand blade in the sand edge penetrated Ross's body, it was blocked by the power of distortion. He sighed. Why is it that no one believes the truth? After punching Crocodile's sand blade, Ross's eyes gradually calmed down and he said, now that you've done it, you can bet your life on it. Since the truth is not believed, then whoever has the biggest fist will speak the truth. Their strength is the sole factor for testing the truth. For this kind of thing, life is really a good bet. It seems you are ready. Crocodile is not surprised that Ross has blocked his attack. He can make Marines suffer from losses. He is someone who has completely destroyed the Iron Wall pirates. It will not be this easy to defeat him. He extended his right hand and slammed into the underground. Bang! The ability of Logia sand fruit was fully launched by him. In the original broken ground, countless cracks appeared in an instant, centered on the place he pressed and spread in all directions. The black soil with water changed from black to brown and finally yellow to at a visible speed. Almost instantaneously, the earth within a few tens of meters of the radius was completely turned into sand. This sand wrapped Ross in it and strangled him. Changing the terrain, you want to create a more favorable battle environment? Ross looked calmly at the street that had turned into a sandy field in a flash, without any fluctuation in his eyes. But you're not the only one who can control the sand, he said. Bang! In the next moment, Ross lifted his foot and the sand that swept over him exploded instantly under the influence of the power of distortion. Then Ross raised his hand towards Crocodile and shook it away. The sand under Crocodile's feet suddenly surged out of his control, wrapped around him and then squeezed him violently. Bang! Crocodile's body was squeezed and turned into sand, which soon reassembled and regained its human form. Using your ability to manipulate sand, he stared at Ross with no surprise in his eyes, but with a slight sneer. Are you competing for the control of elements in front of a Logia fruit user? He said. At the moment his voice fell, Crocodile raised his arm and waved at Ross. In an instant, the sand under Ross's feet suddenly rushed toward Ross with lightning speed, turning into sharp sand blades and intending to cut Ross off from waist. This attack was already captured by Ross's observation hockey. He raised his hand and directly pressed it on the sand blade. Bang! Ross's power of distortion can no longer control the sand, but under the power of distortion outbreak, Crocodile can no longer maintain the shape of the sand. The whole blade of the sand pops open, turning into countless sand particles and drifting in all directions. Just as the dust and sand drifted away, Ross stepped on his feet and he left a residual image as he charged towards Crocodile. He clenched his right hand into a fist and punched. Humph! Crocodile snorted and struck with the same unafraid fist. His fist instantly deserted and turned into a huge sandboxing almost double the size of Ross. Bang! Suddenly the two fists collided and the huge sand fist consisting of dust and sand exploded abruptly under Ross's power of distortion, revealing Crocodile's arms and fists. Ross did not stop this punch and continued to collide with Crocodile's fist. Crocodile's eyes were shivering and he was about to mobilize his powers to drain the water from Ross and turn Ross into a corpse. But before his powers could invade Ross, a violent power of distortions poured down on his arm. Bang! One of Crocodile's arms, under the power of distortion, was instantly turned into yellow sand and he flew backward. That attack was strong, but I am a Logia user. This types of tricks won't work against me. Crocodile turned into the sand in midair and reassembled in another place. His arm, which was exploded, was instantly restored to its original state. Lafitte squinted slightly as he watched the scene from a distance. That is, the elementalization of the Logia devil fruit, the most powerful of devil fruit. It really is something. Crash. After the yellow sand recondensed into crocodile shape, he lowered his voice and raised his hand to the ground. Sand fruit's ability exploded wantonly. Ground death, erosion samsara, centered on him. The earth once again spreads towards desertification in all directions. Everything, whether earth, stone or architecture, is eroded by sand fruit, which has collapsed and powdered into yellow sand. Lafitte watched the scene and his face changed slightly as he leapt back a few times, jumping to the top of a building farther away, watching from afar. Whiz. Ross did not give Crocodile the chance to unleash his abilities wantonly. Instead, he stepped forward and used Geppo to rush towards Crocodile. Faced with the rushing Ross, Crocodile gave a cold hum. He lifted his hands up and the dust and sand whirled wildly around him in an instant, turning into a terrifying hurricane. Sables, sandstorm. Bang. 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 Ross was wrapped in a large sandstorm released by Crocodile, but he was not swept away by dust and sand. Instead, he used Geppo, moonwalk, and forced himself out of it and punched Crocodile. Crocodile sank his face slightly. This brief confrontation gave him a clear idea of Ross's abilities. His physical strength was extraordinary and his fruit development was extraordinarily powerful. Almost no trick could stop Ross's steps. Even though he is a Logia user, it is not easy to fight Ross. But, as an elemental ability, it will always be invincible. Crocodile did not think that his Logia would lose to Paramecia. After all, the consumption of stamina by Logia was lower than that by Paramecia. Faced with Ross's punch, Crocodile's right arm folded into a knife made from sand and slammed it towards Ross. However, just as Ross's fist was about to collide with Crocodile's sand knife, a strange force suddenly gushed out of his fist and instantly covered it. Armed. Crash. Although this punch does not release the power of distortion, it still breaks Crocodile's sand knife with armament hockey's hardening strength and his physical ability, which he never neglects to exercise. Crocodile went to New World and even challenged Whitebeard. It was impossible for him to not recognize armament hockey. He was so shocked that he could hardly escape. He could only clench his fist and wrap himself in the sand. Bang! Ross's punch shattered Crocodile's rushed sandbox shell and collided directly with Crocodile's fist. Even though armament hockey's attack was far less powerful than his full-blown power of distortion, the punch still caused severe pain in the phalanges and numbness in Crocodile's fingers. Damn, hockey! Ross used armament hockey, which was obviously beyond Crocodile's expectation. He was shocked. All the contempt against Ross had disappeared, replaced by a very dignified expression. To be able to use hockey and or not are two completely different concepts against a Logia user. Without armament hockey, a Logia user will not have any obvious weakness and they will be able to defeat their opponent. But once someone is able to use hockey, he will have a basic strength against any Logia user. Even the weaker armament hockey still has the effect of capturing the Logia competent entity. The thing about Logia users is that they always think that they know everything and will always remain superior to others. Unfortunately, you know nothing about my strength. Armament hockey attached to Ross's fist disappeared, avoiding a sand knife that Crocodile counterattacked with. At the same time, the power of distortion suddenly rushed out and he punched the coming sand knife, scattered it. If Ross's hockey had been able to attach to the power of distortions, then this blow would have been enough to hit Crocodile hard. Crash! Crocodile turned into the yellow sand and recoagulated dozens of meters away. His face gradually restored calm and the surprise just disappeared. It seems that you still can't use hockey very well. He once challenged Whitebeard and was seriously injured by Whitebeard's punch. The power of the shock is somewhat similar to the power exerted by Ross's fist, but it is clear that Ross cannot attach hockey to his fruit ability. After all, it was Crocodile and he judged Ross's weakness by his attacks. It is enough to deal with you. Ross did not deny Crocodile's claim that he did not use hockey well enough, but Crocodile did not develop his fruit ability to the level of a marine admiral who could easily destroy an island. Whiz! Ross's figure flickered and in the next moment, he appeared beside Crocodile, his right hand clenched into a fist and he violently punched. The power of distortion erupted, which turned Crocodile's body into a beach of scattered yellow sand again. Then Ross attached his left hand to the black armament hockey, exhibited the hardening of armament hockey, grabbed the scattered yellow sand and pulled Crocodile. Desert Spada, treasured sword of the desert, Crocodile shouted angrily, raised his hand and split violently towards the ground. The whole ground split instantly from the middle, as if cut by something sharp. There appeared a ditch tens of meters in length and breadth. Ross avoided the attack and punched Crocodile with his backhand. He used armament hockey in this punch, causing Crocodile to fly out. Bang! 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 Crocodile continually attacked with Desert Spada that created various cracks in the deserted street. While Ross confronted him positively, he used Distortion Fist to smash his Desert Spada and Armament Hockey armed punch to hit him. "These trick won't work on me." Crocodile snorted, raised his hand and pressed it. The dust gathered and turned into a shield of sand, blocking Ross Armament Hockey's punch. Ross didn't respond and he attacked Crocodile's sand shield with his other hand using the power of distortion and continued his attacks on the sand shield. The battle originally covered an area of about 100 meters that had been turned to sand, but under the battle of these two, it gradually expanded to 200 meters and 300 meters. There, what happened? The street disappeared and became a desert. Countless people who were covered with dust and sand turned their heads to look at the direction of the sand and they were stunned and many of them couldn't believe what they were seeing. Bang! A sound echoed and the sand waves splashed in the area. They were tens of meters high, could be seen clearly from hundreds of meters away. Bang! Another sound echoed. In the tremor, the wind was sweeping in all directions with dust and sand, which made it difficult for many people to keep in their original position. They had to hold onto the buildings next to them. The guards of the Alcaria kingdom have already arrived, but looking at the sand sea, they can only look at each other and no one dared to rush in. As for the general captain of the guard, although he has some strength, the source of this sand is undoubtedly Crocodile, who is one of the 7 warlords of the seas. Rushing in to stop him is obviously a joke. Who is fighting Crocodile? This is the strength of one of the 7 warlords of the sea. Many people look at the area which spreads hundreds of meters and was filled with sand. They cannot help but feel their heart palpitate and they showed some awe and shock in their eyes. Bang! Another bang sounded and a sand wave of about dozens of meters high was splashed in the center. Ross punched Crocodile's Desert Spada, which caused the yellow sand to scatter. Then he punched Crocodile's chest. Bang! Crocodile's body collapsed again into a pool of yellow sand, but when he reformed again into a human figure, the expressions on his face were no longer as calm as before. The punch just now gave him a different feeling. Ross's strength was very different. Hockey's fist could hurt him, but Pure Ability's fist had no effect on him. But now, that Pure Ability's fist has made his chest a little uncomfortable. Misconception. Crocodile's face was somewhat depressed, but Ross had already rushed over again and punched him again with his fist wrapped in the power of distortion. Crocodile didn't evade. He had tried to evade Ross several times before, but Ross has caught him. There is no doubt that Ross also has observation hockey. With a shout of anger, he turned his arms into 2 huge blades of sand and swept towards Ross. Bang! Crocodile's blade of sand failed to hold for a second and it broke apart under the bang of the power of distortion, while Ross's fist was once again on Crocodile. The punch fell and Crocodile's face finally changed. If it was a misconception before then, this time, the pain in his chest cleared that misconception. "What's wrong? You seem surprised." Ross calmly looked at Crocodile. "It's a common phenomenon to make progress in battle. You don't think I'm spending stamina meaninglessly. In this world, fights are always the best catalyst for improving strength." Before, Ross could not combine armament hockey with the power of distortion perfectly, but in his confrontation with Crocodile, he gradually touched the key point of coexistence between the two, hockey with one hand, distortion with another. Ross was going to look for opportunities to activate gravity distortion and use his new abilities to crush Crocodile, but it's not fair for him to use it in this fight and it's not in line with his direct and straightforward style of doing things and his principle of working hard on his own. So he only made preparations for the temporary addition method but did not implement it. Crocodile's face became ugly. Ross's hockey and fruit ability can't be perfectly combined. This is a big flaw and weakness. It is also because of this that he was able to stand against Ross until now. But now Ross is gradually overcoming this defect, and the final result of this battle is clearly flying in a direction beyond his control. Desert La Spada, adamant treasured sword of the desert. Crocodile's face was twisted in anger and he used his sand fruit to its limit. Countless dust and sand rolled up, gathered in the air into various huge blades which surrounded Ross in the center. Under his control, these huge sand blades suddenly attacked Ross from all sides. Crocodile planned to make a quick and large move to finish this fight as soon as possible. Bang! 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 Ross did not have any fear and he did not avoid any coming blade. He just waved his fist in front of him and punched them one after another, and with every punch a sand sword fell, and this attack did not affect him. Crocodile guides the sand in underground with both hands and tries to form a spear to penetrate Ross, but before the spear could come out of the sand, Ross raises his foot and the power of distortion pours into the sand, instantly destroying the unshaped spears. In front of sand fruit, Ross can hardly compete for control of sand, but in the same way, Crocodile can hardly manipulate sand on the ground at will. Don't you understand yet? Crocodile's offensive was disrupted and Ross stepped out of the sand and rushed towards Crocodile. From the beginning, I was fighting against you to exercise my abilities. Bang! As his voice fell, Ross's fist suddenly punched Crocodile's sand shield and broke his arms and shattered his head. Crocodile, who was shattered into yellow sand by Ross's punch, escaped from the underground and reformed his body dozens of meters away. This time, when he recovered, there was a blood spilling from his mouth and nose. Obviously, Ross's last fist had caused some considerable damage. This arrogant guy. Crocodile gritted his teeth and his eyes were filled with killing intent, but by this time, he knew that the bottle's balance of victory and defeat had begun to tilt. If he continues his fight against Ross, then the chances of winning are very low. Crocodile's mind flickered and eventually, he chose to withdraw. But, by this time, he can't walk if he wants to. I seem to have said from the very beginning that since you have started, you have to gamble your life as I do with mine. Ross looked at Crocodile indifferently and he ran after him. Sables, Sandstrom, Crocodile whispered, and a dust storm appeared in his palm and he threw it at Ross. At the same time, he turned into yellow sand and flew away with the wind. Ross stepped on the foot and shot out like an arrow. His right hand was instantly covered with armament hockey hardening and it was inserted into the yellow sand. Crash! Logia's elementalization was directly captured and held in front of Ross's hockey. As Ross pulled, the yellow sand was partially pulled back, revealing Crocodile's figure. Ross ignored Crocodile's dramatic expression and punched him. Bang! This time, Crocodile's body didn't even break up into yellow sand. Instead, it broke up a small part of his body. Crocodile flew backward and bled out of his mouth. Violent, Sables, Sandstrom. Crocodile felt the pain in his chest and gritted his teeth. He had been to New World, experienced numerous dangerous situations and even challenged Whitebeard, but he survived. It was impossible for a pirate newcomer to want his life. With a roar and a violent wave of his hands, the 100-meter square yellow sand flew into the sky in an instant, bursting into an earth-shaking power and attacking Ross in a mad way. Far away, many Alcaria civilians and guards saw this scene and were shocked. In the desert, such a scene is nothing, but here is the kingdom of Alcaria. This scene was something out of a fantasy. In this place, such terrifying sandstorms erupted, so even for them who had lived on the Grand Line their entire life, they were shocked. But, before they could recover from their shock, a loud sound erupted from the sandstorm. The raging sandstorm seemed to become static, it was instantly fixed on the spot and scattered downward. In the middle of the sky, about tens of meters away, two figures appeared and Ross indifferent punched Crocodile's chest and Crocodile's blood dyed the scattered yellow sand. Seeing this scene, many people who know Crocodile are surprised. Compared with Crocodile, Ross's popularity is not very low and he is recognized by many people who are watching from afar in silence. So, a Shichibukai's head, I will accept it. Ross took a false step in the air and instead of falling to the ground with Crocodile, he brewed all the power of distortions into his legs and slammed a back kick that hit Crocodile in the back. Kacha! The sound of broken bones spread clearly and shock filled Crocodile's eyes, but his body completely lost control and he fell downward, eventually falling in the middle of a piece of yellow sand, splashing dust and sand. His eyes fell into darkness and his consciousness gradually shattered. Even at the last moment, he was not accepting this situation. As the most powerful Logia devil fruit user, he should not die here in the hands of a pirate newcomer like Ross. Ross watched Crocodile fall into the sand. There was no movement. After several seconds in the air, Ross also fell to the ground below. After a moment of silence, the people who were watching from afar were finally in an uproar. Everyone in the world had thought that the ghost hand pirates who had provoked Marine and the government completely would stop for a while, but they didn't even stop for half a month, killing not only Iron Wall pirates, but also Crocodile, one of Shichibukai's. Without a doubt, This will be big news that will shock the world again. Everyone present thought that no one could stop the rise of the ghost hand pirates. On the other side, Ross didn't care about the reaction of Alcaria's civilians. He landed in the sand below, next to Crocodile's body, which had gradually lost its vitality and it suddenly disappeared. After 2 seconds, Ross's face, which had remained calm, showed a smile. 7 warlords of the sea, Sand Crocodile, has been killed, earning a reward of 100 talent proficiency points and 1 free talent point. Killing a Shichibukai really has hidden rewards, which is equivalent to the first kill of Marine Vice Admiral. This is undoubtedly an unexpected surprise for Ross. Counting the rewards from killing Iron Wall pirates, he now has 180 talent proficiency points and 4 free talent points. It can also be deduced from Shichibukai's existence of hidden rewards that the hunting rewards given by talent system are not based solely on the suspended bounty of the world government. However, in most cases, suspended bounty corresponds to the level of strength. Now that he thinks about it, Iron Wall Rivero, who had a bounty of 180 million berries, has a strength that was comparable to a Shichibukai, but he failed to give him any additional reward after the hunt. Well, people should be content and happy. Captain Ross, even a Shichibukai has been killed, so Shichibukai's position is vacant. Lafitte came up from a distance and looked at Crocodile's body lying in the yellow sand, tilting his head and showing a thoughtful look. Speaking of it, Captain is absolutely qualified to serve as Shichibukai with your strength, but the government is mostly ready to kill us. So Shichibukai's position doesn't need to be considered. Ross nodded. Without the previous newspaper, he was likely to receive an invitation by the world government's Shichibukai agreement after he has eliminated Crocodile. Now, whether the government or Marine's senior officials, they are eager to kill him. Unless he has something that both the government and Marine are afraid of, Shichibukai's position is completely untenable. However, even the failure to serve as a Shichibukai did not affect Ross's next plan of action. The next thing to do is to take shelter from the limelight. I have already thought of a good place for us to go. Ross showed a deep gaze that seemed to hold everything. Has it been considered so soon? Captain is reassuring. Lafitte smiled, which just shows a little respect. Come on, let's get out of here. Ross did not go to see Crocodile's body and walked away, and Lafitte quickly followed. After destroying one of the 7 warlords of the sea, plus the previous events, in Ross's vision, he will encounter the following situations. One is the assassination by CP from the government's intelligence agency, and the other is in the form of encirclement and suppression by at least 2 vice admirals from Marine headquarters. Finally, and worst of all, a Marine admiral. Even if he has 180 talent proficiency points and 4 free talent points, and his strength can be greatly improved, it is impossible for him to cross the huge power gap between Marine admiral and escape once he encounters him. In the first case, the whole crew must be on high alert at all times. No matter which CP unit is, their strength will not be weak. If they ambush and assassinate their crew, the situation will be very dangerous. He may be able to deal with it, but Robin's situation will become very dangerous unless she stays with him all the time. As for the second case, it's not going to be good either. With this harvest, Ross's strength will surely surpass those of Doberman's headquarters Vice Admiral. But when 2 Vice Admiral and even 3 Vice Admiral join forces, strength is not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Lafitte and Robin are not strong enough to fight against headquarters Vice Admiral. Although relying on talent system all the way to come here, all the enemies encountered were defeated by him, but Ross never regarded himself as Straw Hat Luffy. Luffy could overcome any dangerous situation, including Kizaru's attack, Aokiji's attack, and he survived Garp's crazy training and came out even stronger. For Ross, despite the smooth journey so far, as long as he encounters a real dangerous situation, maybe he will never be saved because no one will save him, he can only depend upon himself. So from the beginning to the present, before every action, he tried to take everything that would happen into account in advance. The news of Crocodile's defeat at Ghost Hand Ross's hand quickly passed back to the Marine headquarters and the world government, and was also uncontrolled as the news spread to the entire sea. For a time, countless people moved. Every 7 warlords of the sea is a well-known strong man on Grand Line. People may not be able to name vice admirals, but 7 warlords of the sea, even the 4 emperors of New World, will pay some attention to them. Many of the top powers judged that Ross would be pursued by the government and Marine crazily when the previous news spread across the sea. He will be silent for a long time or may even die. Unexpectedly, just over half a month later, Ross reappeared and defeated one of the supernovas, offering a $180 million berries bounty in the first half of Grand Line in the Seven Warlords of the Sea. The rising trend seems to be true, as the news said, unstoppable. At the same time, the government and Marine also issued an order urgently, and all eyes were gathered at Alcaria. The whole sea was in turmoil, and Ross, who was in the center of that turmoil, was standing alone on the edge of a cliff in Alcaria Island, looking at the boundless sea. In the two battles with Crocodile and Iron Wall Rivero, he was not seriously injured. He was only chopped by Crocodile's sandblade on his shoulders, and the scars were not deep. He was slightly bandaged and almost had recovered in 3 days. If he had a ship doctor, he might recover faster. See. Ross touched the bandage on his shoulder and gently pulled it off, revealing the dark brown scab inside. He stretched out his hand and the scab slowly fell off, revealing the tender skin inside. It seems that there will still be a little scar left. I should really recruit a doctor for the ship. As One Piece world's most decisive and handsome existence in his own view, a scar on his body is something Ross can't tolerate. Putting aside the messy ideas, Ross stretched his arm and felt that there was no problem at all. Then he moved his mind and evoked Talent System's interface. Finally, gravity distortion. Ross took a deep breath and made a decision. He immediately placed 3 free talent points into the second branch of distortion fruit, gravity distortion. Buzz. A golden light flashed and the branch of gravity distortion was instantly activated, turning from emerald green to golden yellow, and at the same time, a warm current instantly rushed out of Ross's body. This warmth did not enhance Ross's body, nor did it enhance the power of distortion fruit, but it gave Ross a very strange feeling. The world that was originally in front of him had only the sky and the sea, the air and the earth, but at this moment, he seemed to see something different. Whoosh! This strange feeling lasted only a few seconds, then completely disappeared, but Ross's perception has become completely different. He can clearly perceive the existence of gravity and can use the power of distortions to directly interfere with it. Ross's mind moved, triggering the power of distortion, turning his body's direction of gravity from downward distribution to upward, and his body immediately flew towards the sky. The first time he used gravity distortion, Ross seemed to be somewhat uncomfortable. As soon as he flew into the sky, he made an Armstrong 720-degree spiral motion in the air, just like a headless fly. Bang! Ross dissipated the power of distortion, lifted his foot and cast Geppo, Moonwalk, which barely stabilized his body, but he was still a little dizzy. On the deck of Ghost Shadow ship, anchored at sea, Robin was looking strangely at Ross in the sky tens of meters away, just in line with Ross, who was holding his body. Ross was silent for a moment and asked earnestly, "Robin, do you see God?" Robin silently regained her gaze and did not pay any attention to her own captain that has clearly gone mad. When Ross thought that this world did not have some kind of insecticidal and mosquito-repellent liquid, he stopped and did not continue to think in depth, but continued to try gravity distribution, his new ability. After a few minutes, Ross is suspended over Ghost Shadow ship, flying from left to right and from right to left. Robin, who sat on the Ghost Shadow ship, remained expressionless all the time. If she can, she would like to exert her ability to pull her captain from the sky, but the consequences of doing so are probably beyond her ability, so she can only think about it. A few minutes later, with the power of gravity distortion, Ross has taken full control of the flight capabilities and has begun experimenting with the ability to combine this flight with Geppo, Moonwalk. Geppo, Moonwalk, is a means of walking in the air, and it has to bear the limit of gravity at all times, but if there is no gravity, the speed of the Geppo, Moonwalk, will be a lot faster, and if the direction of gravity can be changed as desired, in line with the movement direction of Geppo, Moonwalk, the speed can become even faster. Simply relying on Geppo, Moonwalk, will become frustrating if he is to face an airborne battle with Doflamingo or Kizaru, and he will be at a great disadvantage, but if he has the ability to fly with gravity distortion, the situation will be completely different. Whiz. Whiz. It is difficult to combine gravity with Geppo, Moonwalk, in terms of movement. After all, Ross has just got the gravity distortion ability, but Ross's constant practicing has led his aerial walking to become more and more skilled. With gravity distribution, Ross's moonwalk can be said to have become an upgraded version. Even if he didn't invest much proficiency in the moonwalk, his instantaneous speed in the air would not be much slower than those of Headquarters Vice Admiral, who are proficient in Marine's Rokushiki. After exercising for about half an hour, Ross's stamina finally couldn't support it. The gravity distortion itself was not very expensive for stamina, but Geppo, Moonwalk, was a real stamina consumer. Under double consumption, his body still couldn't bear it. Controlling gravity, Ross slowly landed on the Ghost Shadow ship deck. Robin took the book in one hand and silently picked up the juice on the table with the other hand and put it to her mouth without drinking or putting it down. Ross calmed down and looked contemptuous at Robin. What does this action mean? Being a pirate's captain, can't he grab his crew member's glass of juice? After a short break, Ross jumped to the cliff on the shore again. Instead of rushing to exercise, he called out Talent Systems Interface again. Without hesitation, he put 90 talent proficiency points on physical enhancement. Buzz. The golden light flashed and the general's talent value changed rapidly. Agility enhancement. 150, high-level strengthening. Physical enhancement. 350, top-level strengthening. Physical enhancement's maximum value is 500 points and today it has reached 350 points, which is very close to maximum value. Since physical enhancement is a passive percentage increasing talent, it is not a fixed numerical increase. Therefore, maximum value means that physical enhancement is at the apex and can no longer continue to improve. On the other hand, it will mean that Ross's passive talent bonus has reached a terrifying level. Maybe his own basic physical fitness just needs to be exercised to the level of Headquarters Vice Admiral. With the great improvement of physical enhancement maximum value, he can directly reach the level close to Garp. The remaining 90 talent proficiency points, Ross put them all in Distortion Fruit. Buzz. The 90 additional talent proficiency points of Distortion Fruit has made Ross's power of distortion boost from 100 meters to more than 200 meters. This level of power of distortion is far from the power of Whitebeard and Marine Admiral, which can easily shake a large island, but in this sea, it is a level that countless people can hardly reach in their lifetime. Firearms shooting. 50 close combat fighting, 100. Distortion Fruit. 390 Soru of Marine's Rokushiki, 0. Kami-e, paper drawing, of Marine's Rokushiki, 0. Marine's Rokushiki's Geppo, Moonwalk, 0. Observation Hockey. 15 Armament Hockey, 0. Looking at the brand new battle skill tree, Ross blinked and muttered. If only I could take back the talent point used for firearms shooting. I don't know if there will be any chance to take back the talent point in the future. When he first came to this world, he couldn't fight the guns with his strength. The guns were indeed something that must be mastered, but now it has almost no effect. Close combat fighting is the ability that still plays a very important role even now. One is a loss, but the combination of two is not a loss. After shaking his head, Ross's mind moved and the talent system interface disappeared. He shook his fist and felt the strength in his body, then suddenly lifted his foot and stepped on it. Bang rumble. He applied gravity distribution to the 100-meter square cliff wall, which instantly showed signs of widespread collapse. The stones broke apart and floated up. Although they had no direct contact with Ross's body during the suspension process, the gravity of distortion was not restored. Instead, they were still in the state of distortion and under Ross's control. Sure enough, the power will not disappear directly, but will gradually weaken. Ross's eyes flashed as he smiled. Previously, his power of distortion had to be transmitted through the medium of matter. Once there was a break between the substances, his power of distortions would be cut off instantly. Just like holding a knife. If the blade suddenly breaks, his power of distortions will be instantly cut off and can no longer act on the broken part of the blade, unless he touches it again with his body. But now, after the gravity distortion is activated, even if the medium of transmission disappears, his power of distortion will not be interrupted by the moment, but will still act on that part of the material. That is to say, even if the blade suddenly breaks, as long as the knife is used by his power of distortion, it is still under his control. Although the power of this partition will slowly diminishing over time, it is enough for Ross. There was an irrepressible excitement on his face, and he raised his hands and slammed them in front of him. Bang long. The square of rock that was nearly 100 meters long was completely ruptured and suspended in a place. Under the influence of Ross's ability, it slammed toward the center and turned into a huge meteorite with a radius of tens of meters. Suspended in the air, it looked like a perfect work of art. Captain's power is getting stronger again. Robin on the ship could no longer read the book quietly. She stood up and looked at the huge movement on the cliff and couldn't help but take a deep breath. Breaking off the 100-meter-long cliff and letting the gravel gather in the air, turning it into a huge meteorite, This power is simply ridiculous. It seems that it is no longer the power that devil fruit can do as a result of distortion. As for the handyman who heard the sound on the ship, they have already fallen into a sluggish state. No. Robin stared at the huge meteorite and her expression gradually changed. She seemed to see a fissure on the meteorite. As time went on, it continued to increase, and there were vague signs of collapse and fall. If such a big thing falls so close, even if it doesn't hit the hull of Ghost Shadow Ship head-on, the waves will probably overturn Ghost Shadow Ship. Gotcha. Gotcha. The signs of meteorite crushing are growing, huge invisible cracks have appeared on its surface and a cold sweat has appeared on Robin's forehead. And just as the meteorite was about to collapse, Ross's figure flickered and jumped onto the meteorite and the power of distortion instantly covered the entire meteorite. Bang rumble. Half of the meteorites crumbled and closed again. Almost there, I can control about it for 20 seconds after the partition. Ross watched the giant meteorite beneath him, his eyes reflecting. After cutting off the meteorite, his power of distortion could last for 20 seconds remotely. 20 seconds is enough. It's not float fruit and gravity fruit after all. And as distribution fruit continues to develop, this time will probably continue to increase. Buzz. Judging the state of disconnecting and direct contact, Ross no longer spent his stamina in maintaining such a meteorite in the air. He controlled it to fall slowly to the sea below and eventually to the bottom of the cliff bit by bit. Even if it fell bit by bit, it still caused waves upon waves which pushed the Ghost Shadow Ship away with the waves. Captain, can you please don't do such dangerous things near the ship? With a sigh of relief, Robin showed a smiling face and stared at Ross, who was not far away, and there was a dangerous atmosphere in the air. Ross subtly avoided Robin's question and said, "Call back Lafitte. It's time. We're leaving tomorrow." Robin sighed. "Okay. Very soon." Robin contacted Lafitte via Dendenmushi and called Lafitte back from the island. Log pose only stores 1/3 of its magnetism. If we leave now, we'll lose our route, Captain. Lafitte returned to the ship and realized that they were leaving tomorrow and was puzzled. Don't worry about that. The magnetic force is very strong in the place we're going to go to. As long as we get close, we will forcibly seize the magnetic force on Log Pass. By then, the 3 arrows may point to the same island. Ross responded calmly. As a navigator, Lafitte is completely familiar with the navigation of Log Pose and Grand Line, but Ross's words still make him feel a bit strange, but he has no doubt. Since following Ross, all the experiences along the way have proved that Ross's decision is without any mistakes. Same day. Ross is training the newly acquired gravity distortion on the shore and is familiar with the soaring physical strength and power of distortion. He has been able to adapt to his powers that day and has been able to master his own strength. At noon the next day, Ghost Shadow Ship pulled up the anchor and lowered the sail. Captain, which direction do we go? Since Log Pose has not yet stored full magnetic force and the purpose of this trip is completely determined by Ross, Lafitte does not know the direction and asks Ross. It doesn't matter, just go in any direction. Ross stood on the deck, and when Lafitte and Robin were somewhat obscure, he continued, just go straight ahead, leave Alcaria's field of vision first. Lafitte and Robin looked at each other with a feeling of being unreliable, but the two still did not question Ross's decision. They controlled the Ghost Shadow Ship and left Alcaria. When Alcaria gradually turned into a blurred black shadow on the horizon and finally disappeared from their line of sight, Ross, standing on the deck, looked up at the sky. So, the place we are going next is Sky Island. The moment his voice fell, Ross raised his arm and gently closed his 5 fingers in front of him. Power of distortion spread rapidly, covering the whole Ghost Shadow Ship, and then he turned the direction of gravity. Crash. Nearly 40 meters long, Ghost Shadow Ship, under Ross's power, rose slowly from the sea, causing waves to surge. All the people on the ship were stunned. Several handymen looked around in horror. Lafitte was a little shocked. Only Robin showed a sudden look and looked up at the sky. As an archaeologist of O'Hara's, she is naturally aware of the existence of the Sky Island. The Sky Island is indeed a good place to take shelter from the limelight, but it is really unexpected to be able to send a whole ship to the sky. After Robin stabilized herself, she smirked. She didn't doubt that Ross had the ability to send Ghost Shadow Ship to the island because Ross never did anything that he was unsure of. Lafitte showed a strange expression. After hearing Robin's words, he also smiled. Sky Island. It seems that it really exists. Buzz. When the ship rose to a position of 30 or 40 meters from the sea, Ross's hand gently lifted up and the whole ship suddenly accelerated, rising rapidly toward the sky, getting higher and higher. The Sky Island is a buffer space that Ross has set a long time ago. As long as the gravity distortion's ability is activated, he will have the ability to enter the Sky Island at any time. Moreover, there is also something on the Sky Island that Ross cares about, that is, Logia Devil Fruit, Rumble Fruit. Today is the great age of pirates in March of the 12th year. During this period, Enel has not yet got Rumble Fruit. This fruit has not yet appeared, or it has already appeared, but it has not been found by Enel. As one of Logia's strongest devil fruits, its power is beyond doubt. By acquiring the power of Rumble Fruit, one may not be able to reach the level of a marine admiral, but with a little practice, it is enough to occupy a place in 7 warlords of the sea. Ross had the idea of this fruit a long time ago. Knowing it was on Sky Island and leaving it to Enel was like seeing a pile of money by the roadside and not picking it up. Whether he has a chance or not, he has to take a look. Even if he already has the distortion fruit, he can have one of his crew members eat it to create a powerful battle power. He can also eat a second devil fruit with the help of the talent system, but the requirement of 5 free talent points is too high. A few days later, in the kingdom of Alcaria, a man on a bicycle came here and scratched his hair after a fruitless search. It seems that I am a little late. Aokiji left the headquarters a long time ago. After getting the news, he immediately rushed to Alcaria. He thought that according to Alcaria's magnetic storage days, it should be enough to arrive before the ghost pirates set sail, but he was still late. It's causing me a headache, let's forget it, I will treat it as a vacation. After shaking his head, Aokiji rode his bicycle away from Alcaria and the way the bicycle rolled was silently frozen into an ice road. A few days later, the fleet of the nearest marine base in the kingdom of Alcaria arrived and confiscated the body of Crocodile and reported the situation to the seniors of the marine headquarters. Can't you stop it? After getting the news, Fleet Admiral Sengoku sat down at the desk and rubbed his eyebrows. Contact Aokiji. Where is he now? Aokiji's departure from marine headquarters was naturally clear to him. Although Marine Admiral's personal move for a $200 million pirate was a little over the top, Ross's influence was too bad for them. Aokiji was secretive and acting alone. Nobody knows. Just as Sengoku was about to contact Aokiji and ask questions, a Den Mushi on the table suddenly sounded. This Den Mushi was used by the secret agencies of the world government. Hello? I'm Sengoku. Sengoku frowned and answered the phone. There was a low voice on the other end of the phone. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, the government has given us full responsibility for the Ghost Hand pirates. If necessary, marine battleship may be mobilized. First hope you marine will cooperate fully. I see. Sengoku, after a little silence, responded by hanging up Den Mushi. He wasn't surprised that the government took over the matter of the Ghost Hand pirates directly. Compared with marine, today's top government officials are much more intense at killing Ross. And Ross's affair is already boiling. It's really not suitable to make a big move. Aokiji will travel alone. That's why, it's a good choice for the CP to deal with it secretly. In Sengoku's view, it is indeed a suitable choice. The time went slightly forward, 6 kilometers above the sea. The speed of the ghost shadow ship is fixed to a certain extent, rising rapidly toward the sky. The sea below has become somewhat out of reach and there are plenty of clouds around it. After crossing the limit of 6 kilometers, looking up, they can almost see a vast white cloud hanging in the sky as if carrying another world. Buzz. The rapidly rising ghost shadow ship began to slow down. As the cloud level got closer and closer, Ross jumped to the top of the mast, raised his hand and reached out into the clouds. The power of distortion under Ross's control was fired up against the sea cloud. In a crash, the sea cloud swung to both sides and was torn apart by Ross as he created a huge crack. Ghost shadow ship abruptly accelerated, crossing the sea clouds under Ross's open road and continuing to descend upwards. A lot of fish and large monsters could be seen in the sea clouds. These monsters found the existence of Ghost Shadow Ship, but before they could come, Ghost Shadow Ship rushed to a higher place. Crash. Finally, at the top of the cloud, the whole sea cloud burst into a hole, and Ghost Shadow Ship flew up from it, hovered in midair and slowly landed on the cloud. This cloud is like a sea of water, holding up the Ghost Shadow Ship. This is Sky Island. Lafitte came to the side of the ship and looked down at the clouds holding the hull. He smiled and said, "It's amazing that clouds can carry a ship." Ross nodded. The existence of the Sky Island is very difficult for him to understand, but different worlds have different rules. This world is such a magical place that there is a Sky Island. After looking at the surrounding environment, he asked Lafitte, "Look at the log pose, is there any change?" "There is a change. The three arrows all point in one direction." Lafitte looked at the high-level log pose worn on his wrist and was surprised. The three arrows of the high-level log pose usually point to the three islands. If it points in one direction, it means that the magnetic force in that direction is very strong. After carefully observing the changed log pose, Lafitte found that the direction indicated by the arrow was still oblique and upward and could not help but look in that direction. "We need to go up." "Yes, this is the White Sea. We will reach the Sky Island by going up for another 3 kilometers. First adapt to the environment here, then we will go up." Ross nodded and said, "This is the Sky Island 10 years ago from Luffy's time. Any situation may exist." Yonko, 4 Emperors, 100 Beast Kaido also played free fall over the island, so in order to be safe, he first adapted to the thin air environment of the Sky Island. Half a day later, gradually adapting to the Sky Island environment, the impact on power became very small. Ross once again launched his ability, wrapping the Ghost Shadow ship and rushed from the White Sea and towards the Sky Island. Enel had the power of Rumble Rumble Fruit before coming to the Angel Island, which means that Rumble Rumble Fruit is not on the Angel Island, but in the Burka Island that he will destroy in 4 years. Ross had a few memories flashing through his mind. After sailing in the direction indicated by the log pose, the island that they arrived is actually the Angel Island in the original series. If they fall vertically from here, they will arrive at Jai Island and enter another route of Grand Line, which is the route taken by Luffy. However, Ross's purpose is not to cross the route, but to go to another Sky Island, Burka. So after arriving at the Angel Island, the only thing he needs to do is to find a map of the Sky Island. The Angel Island is currently ruled by Gonfall, and the arrival of Ross and others has not caused too much hostility to the Sky Islands because occasionally there will be Blue Sea people arriving at the Sky Island through several routes. There are things you care about here. Poneglyph Stone. Walking along the cloudy bank of the Angel Island, Ross enjoyed the surroundings and spoke to Robin, who was following him. The mission to get the map was handed over to Lafitte, and on his side, he was responsible for taking Robin to find the Poneglyph Stone that she cares about. Robin looked at Ross strangely, not in disbelief of what Ross had said, but in some ways wondering why Ross had come all the way here and how he knew that there was a Poneglyph Stone tablet. "Has Captain been here before?" "No, but nothing in this world can escape my eyes." "The same is true for the Sky Island," Ross said. Robin was used to her captain's style. She turned her head to smile and said, "So, Captain knows what happened in the Void Century 800 years ago." Ross's face remained unchanged, and he said calmly, "Truth needs to be pursued by yourself to make sense. If I told you now, you would lose your motivation to move forward." "That makes sense." Robin covered her mouth and chuckled. "Let's go." Ross turned to Robin and put his hand on her shoulder. Distortion Fruit's ability was activated. They instantly broke away from the bondage of gravity and flew toward the sky. The feeling of being wrapped up by inexplicable power was strange. Robin couldn't hold her body for a moment and she almost turned over her head and feet, but she was still controlled by Ross. "Is it on top?" Robin did not resist and she let Ross take her upward while looking up at the sky. While looking up to the sky, she saw the sky above has a deeper layer of clouds, which goes on upwards, seemingly endless. Ross put his hand on Robin's shoulder and looked up at the clouds. 400 years ago, a part of an island on Grand Line was taken to the sky by the knock-up stream. It was called the ancient city of Shandora. This island was later called Holy Land Skypia by the Sky Islanders. Between the words, Ross has taken Robin out of Angel Island and flew to Holy Land Skypia, which was not far from the Angel Island. Flying in midair, they can clearly see that Skypia is standing on a huge vine, extending all the way to an unknown height, into the clouds above the sky. Captain's understanding of history is really beyond my expectations. Robin looked at the huge vine, but there was something different in her dark eyes, which was obviously historical knowledge. Ross would know so much about it that she wondered if Ross had ever lived here. The Sky Island people who live here have wings on their backs and Ross obviously don't have them, and the people here will not tear out their wings. Ross smiled. "I know more than you think. If you want to know more, we can do more in-depth understanding." Robin always thought Ross's words were a little strange, but she couldn't say them. Very soon, The two flew over the sky of Holy Land. Skypia and Ross took Robin and flew straight up, following the huge vines, all the way up to the clouds and finally stopped on an island cloud. This island cloud is not big, only tens of meters square, and in its center stands a golden bell, which has remained here for 400 years. Looking at the golden bell, Robin involuntarily walked towards it. The golden bell, full of the ancient and brilliant flavor of historical civilization, has a fatal attraction for her. Poneglyph. Near the golden bell, Robin saw the Pangli PH branded on the base, or the whole golden bell, built with a stone tablet of poneglyph. Robin's hand gently stroked the words on the stone tablet, suppressing the emotions in her heart, silently reading the text on it, and her eyes gradually became illusory. Ross came over and said, "Can you read it?" Robin's eyes flashed. She paused for a second and whispered, "This is Log, the ancient weapon with the name of God, the seed of Sea King." When he heard Robin's words, Ross smiled a little and took over her words. "Guide to the junction of Red Line and Grand Line, the island of the mermaid deep in the sea." Robin looked at Ross with astonishment. Ross' explanation behind the poneglyph stone tablet was almost the same in translation. If Ross had known so many hidden histories before and could explain them, it would be incredible for him to be able to read poneglyph. In this world, only O'Hara's scholars can understand poneglyph, and she should be the only survivor of O'Hara's. Poneglyph, it's not that hard to read. Ross calmly looked at the poneglyph stone. The Sky Island Pogoglyph stone, which logs the location of the ancient weapon Sea King Poseidon, clearly exists in Ross's memory. Before he asked Robin if she could interpret it, he just wanted to see if she would tell him the message of the ancient weapon Sea King logged here. However, although Ross knows the existence of Sea King Poseidon and that Pluton's location is hidden on the poneglyph stone tablet in alabaster, he does not intend to touch ancient weapons prematurely. In the absence of a certain strength, it is meaningless to acquire ancient weapons. The government can easily take them away by sending a marine admiral. At least, the real deterrent of these weapons is only when he has the strength to confront a marine admiral. Robin bowed her head and was silent. At this moment, she had countless thoughts in her heart. Never had she experienced such a confusing moment. Does Ross really know the truth about the Void Century? Should she ask Ross? But if she really gets the answer, as Ross said, her life goal will completely disappear, and then she wouldn't know what to do. Look here. Ross went to the base of the golden bell and pointed at another string of words inscribed there, interrupting Robin's thoughts. Robin looked up and looked in the direction of Ross's fingers. Her eyes flashed with a trace of amazement again, and her face showed a rare look of shock. "I made it here. I will guide this text to the end of the earth, Pirate Gold D. Roger." Pirate King Gold D. Roger. Did he come over the Sky Island? Why did he write this kind of text? Robin vaguely felt that there was a line in front of her, a line that seemed to be able to connect all the clues together, but it was difficult for her to run through the line from her chaotic thoughts. In addition to O'Hara's scholars, there are others who can interpret poneglyph. All the clues and secrets of Void Century have been learned by Roger, and he put them on Raftel, Ross calmly said. Robin turned her head and looked at Ross. There was an incredible look in the pair of black eyes. There were clues and guidelines. Could it be that Ross went to Raftel? Ross slightly smiled and didn't talk anymore. Some people can be easily conquered by virtue of strength, while others, such as Lafitte, have a clear mind in addition to their strength. As for Robin, in the case of these two conditions, there is a third one, that is, to surpass her in knowledge. After all, Ross did not want a partnership like with the Straw Hats, but a relationship between captain and the crew. Let's go. The depths of the island below are deep, and there are ruins from hundreds of years ago. Ross didn't let Robin's brains fill up for too long, and he interrupted her thoughts and walked to the edge of the clouds, looking down at Holy Land Skypia. After a little silence, Robin went to Ross and hesitated again and again. But she did not ask her questions. She felt that Ross was right and she should personally pursue the truth. Chi. Ross did not grab Robin's shoulder this time. Instead, with a movement of his mind, the soft island clouds on his feet were torn apart and he and Robin flew down. Robin was silent and thought of Ross's process of bringing her up before. She asked with a blank expression, "Why didn't you use this method before?" Ross responded with an unchanged look, "The newly developed capabilities are not too skilled." Skypia. Bang sounds and fierce clashes of knives and soldiers are constantly heard on the island, which is halfway above the current. Some people are fighting on this land. 400 years ago, Skypia was washed over to the Sky Island. The Sky Islanders occupied Skypia as a holy land and drove out all the remaining native Shandians on Skypia. Since then, the war between the Sky Islanders and Shandians has lasted for 400 years. Bang! The Angel Island's current ruler, Godigan Fall, holds a long gun in his hand. A bullet flies out towards an attacking enemy and he shouts towards the many Shandians who are attacking. Skypia is the holy land that God has given us, and I will never allow anyone to attempt to refer to its existence. Bang! The leader of the Shandians was a slightly younger warrior, Wiper, who carried a burn bazooka that used breath dials and flew towards a Sky Islander and shoots at him before saying, "Those who have taken away our homeland are saying that God has given it to them. That's ridiculous. Skypia belongs to us." Many of the Sky Islanders heard Wiper's words and shouted at him. "That arrogant, dares to desecrate holy land, go to hell." A large number of God guards swarmed up and fought together against Wiper and others. The number of Sky Islanders was significantly higher than that of Wiper and Shandians. There was also a huge gap between their equipment configuration and military quality, but Wiper and other Shandians' personal strength is extremely fierce and they have been at a stalemate with the Sky Islanders. In the midst of their scuffle, two figures emerged from the depths of the jungle. War. Robin watched the fight between the Sky Island army and the Sandian people. Although she had struggled for years in the underground world and had seen countless fights and war results, it was undeniable that deep in her heart, she still yearned for peace. Wars tend to drown out a lot of history, but the wars between the Sky Islanders and the Sandians started 400 years ago and continue to this day. Ross calmly stood there with his hands on his back and looking at the battlefield in the distance. After watching it for a few seconds, Ross turned and walked toward the downhill path on one side. This is the upper part of Skypia. The ruins below have been hidden for hundreds of years. No one has found them. Let's go down. Robin looked back at the war in the distance. However, before she could follow Ross for a few steps, a sharp arrow shot suddenly from a distance and towards her body with great precision. Robin's face changed slightly. The arrow came so suddenly which made it impossible for her to escape. But just as the arrow was about to hit her body, a hand approached her, grasped the middle of the arrow and stopped it. Looking at the slightly trembling arrow in his hand, Ross shook his head. One thing he ignored was that the Sky Island people could use observation hockey. Observation hockey is also known as the mantra in the Sky Island. People in Sky Island are really unusual in their ability to see and hear. Some people are even born with mantra, that is observation hockey. It would be strange not to be found at such a close distance. Who's over there? Is it the reinforcement of sinners? Don't hide. And Sky Islander guard with a bow and arrows looks towards the bushes and stared at the position where Ross and Robin were and squinted sharply. Ross shook his head when he heard a cold cry from the other side of the battlefield. He had no intention to meddle between the Sandians and the Sky Islanders, but the other side almost hurt Robin with an arrow. His eyes flashed with indifference as he went out in the open. "I'll teach them some etiquette. You stay here and don't move around." Robin's eyes flashed with doubts and she breathed. The arrow just came suddenly. If Ross wasn't there, she would probably be injured. Observation hockey is something that she should master as soon as possible. In the rustle of bushes, Ross's figure emerged, holding an arrow in his hand as he heads towards the battlefield. He asked calmly, "Who shot the arrow?" In the battle between the Sky Islanders and Shandians, Ross's appearance is extremely conspicuous, because whether they are Sky Islanders or Shandians, there are white wings behind them, but Ross has nothing behind him and his image is quite different from that of everybody on the scene. Looking at Ross, someone frowned and thought of something. Blue sea people? Without wings and feathers, this dress is also strange. It is not uncommon for blue sea people to appear over the island. Many people quickly identified Ross. Holding the bow and arrow was the vice captain of the Sky Island White Beret Army. After a little amazement, he quickly responded with a sharp look in his eyes. "Did the Blue Sea people sneak into the Holy Land? It is strictly forbidden to enter the Holy Land Skypia without permission. It is a felony of grade 3. The Sandians looked coldly from a distance. A clergyman, second only to Gonfall, looked at the situation from a distance and ordered the few soldiers next to him. "Kill him, whiz." As he ordered, various arrows and a number of spears cut through the void and flew toward Ross's body and blocking his escape routes. Faced with this spear with strong wind, Ross did not mean to escape at all. He flexed his finger and flicked it lightly. The spear began to distortion from the tip of the spear. The rest of the spears were all scratched against Ross's body and all were lost. It seems that I don't have to ask. Ross calmly looked at the vice captain of the White Beret Army and walked toward him, ignoring the rest of the chaos in the battlefield. Many Sky Islanders and Shandians, seeing Ross destroying the spears with a weird force, were surprised. As they watched Ross coming towards them, a few people nearby hesitated and rushed up with their own weapons. Crash! However, before they could reach him, the ground under the feet suddenly rolled up like a mire and instantly surged up, wrapping them all in one, revealing only their heads. Ross's footsteps didn't stop at all. He walked forward step by step. The speed and the distance has taken with each step was almost identical. He looked calmly through the field and saw the shocked Sky Islanders and Shandians nearby. Generations pass and generations come again, but the earth lasts forever. Like the fish in the water, they can't live without water. No matter if they are Sky Islanders or people from the blue sea, they can't live without the earth and soil. Bang! 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 As Ross's footsteps progressed, the earth of 100 meters seems to be turned into seawater and it surged crazily, embedding the Shandians and the Sky Islander in it. The faces of Gon fall and several priests changed dramatically, and even Wiper and others looked at this scene with a somewhat shocked and incredible look. As Ross came step by step, the whole earth seemed to obey him and it had paved a path for him, and everyone was bound and wrapped up by the surging earth and rocks. Holy land, Skypia. All the land in this world is created by the gods. I gave it to you 400 years ago, but you have forgotten prayer and piety. Ross went on, raising his hand to the lightly floating emptiness of the priests and Gonfall, who struggled in the surging soil. Crash! The whole earth suddenly collapsed and rolled up like a wave and wrapped everyone in it. Distortion circled and turned into a mountain of about 100 meters wide. Everyone was wrapped in rocks and mud and it was difficult to get out of it even though they struggled. At this moment, everyone's eyes to Ross changed, showing horror and fear, and some of the Sky Island people were shocked. Their body trembled and they kneeled down. God, no. Impossible. There is no God in this world. In the 400 years of war, God never appeared, burning guns. Wiper gritted his teeth and roared as he fired at Ross with the cannon on his shoulder. The blue and white flame burst out from it and shot towards Ross. Ross had no intention of avoiding it and took no visible actions as the ground suddenly surged with countless stones and mud, swallowing the cannon in an instant. Humanity's greed led to war, which lasted for 400 years. God was never your guardian. Just as mortals would not care about the war between ants, why would a god care for a fight between you? It all started with a snap of the finger 400 years ago. Ross stood there calmly, raised his left hand and gently snapped a finger. Crack! In an instant, the earth screamed and swelled and countless gravel mud wrapped around Wiper flew into the air, turning into a huge meteorite, flying toward the sky. With the passage of time, fine cracks gradually appeared on the rising meteorite and eventually, in front of countless people, it suddenly collapsed. The figure of the Wiper, which was wrapped in countless rubble, fell down. Wiper had lost his consciousness for a long time. This is a punishment for your stupidity. Ross's gaze swept across the audience and he immediately turned around, no longer looking at the rear, and entered the depths of the jungle and disappeared. Great Age of Pirates, 12th of April. The god of the earth descends on holy land Skypia and punished the greed of the mortals. The leader of the angels Gonfall and the Shandia chiefs suddenly wake up, repenting and praying for their faults, and sign the peace treaty together. The war, which lasted for 400 years, came to an end. After Robin explored the ruins of the ancient city of Shandora in detail, Lafitte also found the map of the Sky Island and returned to the ship. The Sky Islands are concentrated in the sky above the Grand Line. Although the number is not as high as that of the dense islands on the Grand Line, there are quite a few. On the maps Lafitte has just found, there are 7 or 8 islands. Burka Island is here. After carefully scrutinizing a few maps, Ross took out one of them and clicked on an island that was drawn at the edge. He said, "The navigation of the Sky Island is no different from the normal sea." "Understood, Captain." Lafitte responded with his cane in his hand and did not ask Ross what purpose he was going to Burka. Ross's image in his eyes has been mysterious since he stepped on the island. What is Ross's purpose in going to Burka? It may involve the secret of his own captain. Ross will say what he wants to say and he won't tell what he wants to hide, so there is no point in asking. With the map, Ross and others marched toward Burka. In the meantime, both the Marine and the government on the Grand Line were going crazy looking for the trail of the ghost hand pirates. but the ghost hand pirates disappeared after leaving Alcaria and could not be found. Some people suspect that Ross and others have encountered a storm and were destroyed at sea, but this idea was too exaggerated. With the strength of the ghost hand pirates, how can a storm destroy them? Marine's frantic search with the government did not last long. Over time, it began to slow down gradually. There were still more things to deal with on the sea. It was impossible to put a lot of intelligence resources on the search for ghost hand pirates for a long time. There is no intelligence at all. They completely disappeared after leaving Alcaria? In this case, the mission can't be completed. A black curly-haired man with a pigeon on his shoulder stood on a world government intelligence vessel loitering in the sea near Alcaria. He lowered the Den Den Mushi and frowned at the sea. A month later, Ghost Shadow Ship arrived at Burka. In just one day, Ross defeated Burka's local tribe leader and all the fighters and occupied Burka and told Robin and Lafitte to secretly search for a devil fruit that might be hidden in a corner of the island. 2 months later, Rumble Fruit did not appear and Enel was found by Ross, but he had not eaten Rumble Fruit and Ross was completely uninterested in him. 3 months later, Rumble Fruit still couldn't be found. With the passage of time, the news of the ghost hand pirates on Grand Line was completely silent and many people who occasionally thought of the ghost hand pirates were shaking their heads in secret. Ghost hand pirates, they haven't appeared for a long time, they were probably destroyed by the government and the marine. A pirate hunter sat in the tavern and shook his head. Who knows? They shouldn't have. The reward order hasn't been revoked yet. Ross is a huge spray in the surging sea, but the spray does not continue to blossom but is gradually covered by the rolling waves. Red Hair Shanks lost an arm. The strongest swordsman in the Sipka kingdom has challenged Hawkeye. Conflict appeared between the Beast Pirates and the BIGMOM Pirates. The emergence of such big news is driving the times forward and the ghost hand pirates are gradually forgotten with the passage of time. 7 months later, the Sky Island Burka. Here the white clouds float and all the buildings are made of clouds. Looking like the heavenly kingdom, Bottle's voice comes from a huge open garden in the middle of the island. Whiz. Whiz. Ross's figure flickered back and forth, patted or pressed or pushed and his palm kept falling towards Robin. Robin had her eyes closed and she was constantly catching Ross's movements, or bending her head sideways and pushing Ross away with the palm of her hand. Ross speeded up a bit. Robin's forehead was covered with sweat, but she could still keep away and occasionally get a little scratched. Observation hockey, you have almost mastered it. Ross finally turned away from her. She stopped moving, took back her hand and nodded lightly at him. In the past 7 months, in addition to studying the history of Burka and the Sky Island, Robin has been practicing observation hockey. The Sky Island's observation hockey or mantras practice routes is more clear and easy to learn than Ross's method. Robin's mind is extremely sharp and she has a heart that can remain calm in most cases. She quickly learned about observation hockey's practicing. Robin opened her eyes and said, "With Captain's constant tests, it's natural to learn faster." She deliberately bit the test of the word. Ross's face remained unchanged and he said with a frank face, "Then you have to thank me." "Thank you very much for your guidance, Captain." Robin's mouth raised with a dangerous smile as she stared at Ross. 7 months. Ross looked up at the sky and murmured in a low voice. He had stayed in the Sky Island for 7 months. For him, it was a little longer than expected. He had planned to stay for 3 to 5 months before leaving, but Rumble Fruit wasn't found and the time was constantly prolonged. It's because he took various things for granted. Even if he had guessed the location of the Rumble Fruit in his memory, it is not so easy to get it. Over the past 7 months, he has been practicing all the time. He has mastered the ability of gravity distribution and has improved his physical fitness a lot. However, this practicing speed is obviously far less effective than galloping on the Grand Line, killing all the pirates and defeating Marines. It's time to leave. Ross breathed softly. Without ant fights for 7 months and only practicing repeatedly has become somewhat intolerable for him. He is bored now. Fortunately, Robin was here and he could test her for observation hockey and the scenery on the Sky Island was also good. Blackbeard has been attached to Whitebeard pirates for more than a decade to acquire the Yummy fruit. But Ross will not do so because Rumble Fruit is not so valuable to him. Moreover, if Rumble Fruit appears years later and falls into the hands of a Sky Islander and is eaten directly, it will be a waste of time. For him who has the Distortion Fruit in the talent system, Rumble Fruit is not a must-have, not to mention the ability of gravity distortion. he can come back to the island at any time, without having to bind himself here. And last but not least, he didn't want to make the name of the Ghost Hand Pirates disappear in the ears of those high-level Marines for too long. At Ross's side, when Robin heard that Ross was ready to leave after 7 months, she couldn't help but blink. Living in the Sky Island is much gentler than the sea. They don't have to think about the pursuit of Marine. She doesn't have to think about collecting intelligence. But staying here is impossible if she wants to collect the Poneglyph Stone and know the truth of the Void Century. It is indeed time to leave, so, are we leaving? Lafitte still looks as he did 7 months ago and nothing changed. After being recalled by Ross, he pinched the edge of his hat and asked with a smile. For him, the 7 months of the Sky Island can be said to be very boring, and the devil fruit that Ross asked him to search was not found by him. Naturally. The main purpose of the Sky Island was to avoid the extremely dangerous situation that the government and Marine will create, so although Lafitte was bored, he understood the truth. 7 months without navigation, your level of navigation should not have declined, right? Ross smiled at Lafitte. Lafitte's strength has also improved slightly over the past 7 months. Even though he is still not an opponent of Headquarters Vice Admiral, he can handle a branch Vice Admiral for a while. As for Robin, she's a little stronger now than she would have been in the original series when she set foot on New World. Even if she's not as good as Lafitte, she's still capable of fighting a branch Rear Admiral. Oh, Captain, will see it soon. Lafitte opened his arms slightly with his cane, revealing a smile. Give an order to the Burka tribe to continue to search for the devil fruit, and as soon as they find it, they have to hand it to the chieftain for safekeeping. Ross gave a command. The people of Burka Island has been given a wave of deep hypnosis and brainwashing by him and Lafitte, especially the chieftain and many priests, who have been deeply hypnotized and brainwashed by Lafitte. Even if Rumble fruit appears, as long as it falls into the hands of these priests and chiefs, they will immediately hide it and wait for his return. All right. Lafitte made an aristocratic etiquette and turned to go outside. Ross thought about it again, and after confirming that there was nothing missing, he walked with Robin toward the edge of the island and soon came to the dock and boarded the Ghost Shadow ship. There were a few sailors on the board. Ross picked 3 Sky Islanders in Burka, 1 man and 2 women. The man was strong, second only to the chiefs and priests of Burka. One of the 2 women was a skilled chef. The other is a 17-year-old priest-servant candidate. Like a spirit, Ross feels that serving the priest is too wasteful and changed her destiny. Although Robin is very capable, it's good to have someone share her burdens. Today, Ross's authority is unshakable on board, followed by Lafitte and Robin, both of whom belong to the ship's main crew, while the rest are in the same position. Very soon, Lafitte returned the Ghost Shadow ship after issuing Ross's command. Next stop, North Blue. After Lafitte returned, Ross calmly stated, "It is time to have a ship doctor on board." For a long time, Ross had been considering the candidate for the ship doctor, wandering between the future poisonous Doc Q of Blackbeard Pirates and Surgeon of Death Trafalgar Law. Since Law was too young, Ross has been searching for the intelligence on Doc Q, but he never found anything on him. He finally decided to change his choice and went to North Blue to find Trafalgar Law. Law is 7 years older than Luffy. This year he should be around 15 years old. It's the age when he's going to be out of his childhood and can't stand alone. It's the best time for Ross to recruit him. The location is fixed. It seems that Captain has already chosen someone. Lafitte showed a strange smile on his face. If there is a ship doctor on board, there is no need to worry about meeting a strong enemy, being severely injured and unable to cure the eventual death, and the minor injuries and minor illnesses during the voyage on weekdays are also guaranteed. More importantly, Ross's vision is very high, and the person who can be chosen by Ross may also be a reassuring presence in terms of strength. Let's go. After Ross nodded, Ghost Shadow ship trembled and the sea cloud below swayed silently to the sides, and there was a huge crack that was hundreds of meters long across the cloud sea. The Ghost Shadow ship suddenly fell into the crack and eventually disappeared. A few days later, on a ship sailing on the sea and flying the flag of the world government, a man in a top hat and a parrot standing on his shoulder was connecting Den Den Mushi to the other side. He is the world government subordinates, known as the strongest CP9's member in 800 years, Rob Lucci. More than half a year ago, the mission of the world government concerning the secret assassination and execution of Ghost Hand Ross and the secret arrest of Devil Child Nico Robin was given to him. 7 months, they finally appeared, but how can they appear in North Blue? Lucci listened to the intelligence reported by Den Mushi on the other side and frowned. Did the goddamn ghost hand pirates finally appeared? Standing next to him, Spandam listened to the conversation between Lucci and Den Mushi at the other end, with a hint of irritation in his eyes. The government-supplied mission could not be completed directly because the ghost hand pirates disappears, but if they failed to succeed, it will be hung on their heads no matter what the circumstances were. As the current chief of CP9, he has been delayed by a mission for more than half a year and cannot get half the credit. He is very angry with the ghost hand pirates. In the past, with the efficiency of Lucci and others, a lot of credits was earned, which is why his father specifically mobilized his authority and assigned him to CP9 to serve as chief. As long as he stays in the CP9 for 8 or 10 years, it would be a natural thing to rise to the top of the government and then he would be able to overlook the whole ocean from the top. Lucci hates Spandam more than the pirates he defeated. He believes in the dark justice and sees weakness as sin, and Spandam's battle power is as powerful as a soldier with brass in his hand. But as chief, he was trained to obey orders when he was young, and he could only press down his hatred of Spandam. He hung up the Den Mushi, turned to Spandam and said, "Ghost hand pirates are in North Blue. I think we should go to North Blue now. What do you think?" Spandam hesitated for a moment and finally gritted his teeth and nodded. Although he didn't want to run that far, the world government's mission, which demands speedy completion, has been delayed for half a year. Now the ghost hand pirates has appeared. If the government knows he's doing nothing on this side, it's possible that condemnation orders will come down. Get the marine fleet of the North Blue ready for support. No, let the branch base on the Grand Line send battleship directly to North Blue. Ghost Hand Ross killed the elites of the Marine branch and destroyed one of the 7 warlords of the Sea Crocodile. Spandam is very clear about his strength, and although he trusts the strength of Lucci and others, but for those who are afraid of death, the more secure it is the better. Lucci shook his head and was very unhappy with Spandam, but Spandam was the chief of CP9, making the decision that CP9 must abide by unless he betrayed the world government. Unable to vent his frustration on Spandam, Lucci's mood quickly shifted to the target, which was the culprit of their wandering around the sea for more than half a year. There are still 4 months to go. It's the mission deadline of 1 year. Don't disappear again for no reason, ghost hand pirates. Great Age of Pirates, 13th year in January, North Blue. On a large island, the center is where the aristocrats live with the upper class, while the periphery is where the slums and garbage are stacked and the outer and inner layers are separated by a huge wall. In the corner of the outer slum, in the darkness of a dark alley in the underground world of the country, a boy in a hat is walking forward with a parcel. Trafalgar Law. Paramecia Surgeon Fruit, the second-generation member of the Don Quixote family, left the Don Quixote family at the age of 13 and mingled with North Blue underground forces, 3 months before he turned 16. Law suddenly stopped and looked forward. "Well, it looks like I was discovered?" Deep in the roadway ahead, a voice came out with a trace of surprise when he realized that the teenager was still in place. Soon 7 or 8 shadows appeared deep in the lane and came towards Law's position. At the same time, some people came out from behind the lane and blocked him in the center. Law, who was still young, did not show any panic when he was surrounded by people. Instead, he said calmly, "I'm sorry, I won't see you today. If there are any injuries, try to put it off till tomorrow." The criminal organization of the country's slums is extremely chaotic. Dead people are a common occurrence here, not to mention broken arms and legs. Law has been here for more than half a year. After receiving a lot of money for a broken arm, he has been mixed up in the underground world. However, the people who appeared today are not seeking medical treatment. Dr. Rado, no, Trafalgar Law, that's your real name. It's amazing to have an excellent medical skill at a young age, but unfortunately, I'm not here to seek medical treatment. The first person in the darkness revealed his face. It is a brutal face with a scar on his face. He only has one eye. His one eye is staring at Law, looking at him as a precious treasure. He grinned, but it looked very ferocious, and said, "Don Quixote family is offering 100 million berries to the people who will bring you to them. So, in order to avoid suffering, you can only come with us without any resistance." When he heard the word Don Quixote, Law's face dropped slightly. The eaves of his hat covered his face and no one could see his expression, which had become extremely cold and indifferent. He took off his large sword from his back, which was bigger than him, and said, "It turned out to be the case, but this 100 million bounty will not be so easy to take." "Who?" The one-eyed man did not put Law in his eyes and signaled 2 of his subordinates near him. The two subordinates grinned and walked toward Law. The bounty of 100 million berries was so high that they might be able to get hundreds of thousands of berries afterward. Naturally, they were a little excited. However, just as they came towards Law put his hand out and opened his fingers. A translucent cover appeared from his palm which magnified. Room. Shambles. Sneer. Almost in an instant, Law's body suddenly exchanged position with one of the people present. The demon knife in his hand was crying ruthlessly, and in a moment he cut several people around him into pieces. Strangely, those who were cut did not bleed, and they also screamed in horror as they watched themselves being separated from their bodies. Dead, I am dead. My body has been cut off, what happened? In the screams, some people found that they still seemed to be conscious, but they could not control the body that was cut. The panic slightly subsided, but it was replaced by horror. No wonder a little devil like you can make the Don Quixote family put a 100 million berries bounty on you. Devil fruit. Looking at his subordinates, in an instant, the man with one eye was shocked, his pupils narrowed slightly and his voice was low. It's no wonder that the Don Quixote family will put a bounty of 100 million berries. It turns out to be devil fruit user, but even if he is a capable person, he is still a child. He snorted and pulled out a three-edged weird weapon from somewhere. He suddenly rushed toward Law. The weapon in his hand stabbed Law in the shoulder. He intends to let Law lose his ability to act first. After all, the Don Quixote family wants him alive and not dead. His dead body will get them less than 100 million berries. However, Law's eyes turned indifferently in the face of his stab and his sword swept across him in a flash. In silence, his upper body and lower body were separated from the center and he fell heavily on the street floor. Sneer. Sneer. Law did not wait for the rest of the people to react and he flashed several times in the field at a very fast speed and the remaining people were all unloaded and cut into pieces of broken limbs and scattered. After defeating more than 10 people present, Law stopped and his forehead overflowed with a trace of perspiration. For him who is less than 16 years old, it is obviously not easy to display the abilities of Surgeon Fruit for a long time. I hope you can hold off until the doctor appears. Law indifferently glanced at the pile of broken limbs and the frightened head on the ground. The sword in his hands cut the walls on both sides of the street and cut the base of a building next to it. He put the sword back to its sheath, turned around and walked away calmly. Bang long. Behind him, a building collapsed and all kinds of panic screams ceased. Law did not look back. Before being surrounded by people who had been rushed by the sound, he left the street quietly and entered another dark lane. And just as he was about to cross the dark lane, a strange voice suddenly came from behind him, almost close to his body position. Whoop, you've been found. Almost instantly a creepy feeling eroded Law's body, making his back cold and bristling with sweat. His pupils violently contracted and he rushed forward without hesitation. He rolled several times in succession and flew 10 meters away. Then he turned his head and looked back. There, just a little behind where he had stood before, a strange white man, wearing a ceremonial hat and leaning on a red stick was smiling at him. Who are you? Law showed an unprecedented vigilance. He looked at Lafitte like an enemy. One hand is pressed on the handle of his sword and pulling it out silently. How on earth did this man appear without him noticing? He also appeared at such a close distance to him, which means that if the strange man wanted to kill him, he had no resistance. It doesn't matter who I am. The important thing is, my captain wants to see you. Lafitte shrugged and his face still showed a weird smile. After staring at Lafitte for a few seconds, Law said coldly, what if I don't go? Lafitte casually spread his hand and raised his mouth slightly. If you don't go, it will make me very embarrassed, because this is the mission captain gave me. For Ross's fancy doctor candidate, he is a young man. Lafitte has some doubts in his mind, but if he is a paramecia surgeon fruit user, then there is no problem. Surgeon fruit. Even if he doesn't understand the power of this fruit, just by hearing the name of this fruit, he knows the fruit is related to medical practice. Seeing that Law was unmoved and still maintained a state of great vigilance, Lafitte smiled and leaned forward slightly. He said, don't be so vigilant. Looking at you, you should be able to judge the strength gap between you and me. And, you just dealt with a group of people and you seem to have consumed a lot of your stamina. Lafitte described it in a slightly weird tone. When that sentence fell, Law's expression became a little gloomy. When he was there, he used the ability of surgeon fruit, but he did not find Lafitte hiding in the dark. Even Lafitte came here all the way, he did not find him. What do you want? After a few seconds of silence, Law spoke in silence. Even if he knew that he was mostly not Lafitte's opponent, he could not go directly with people of unknown origin. Lafitte looked at Law and laughed and carelessly answered with a word. You. Upon hearing Lafitte's answer, Law's face became gloomy again and the hand holding the sword became tighter and he was ready to fight. But Lafitte stood there and gave him a feeling of very strong oppression. The way that he had just appeared behind him was silent. It still makes his heart cold and the sword in his hand is screaming for a fight, but he did not dare to rush forward. Don't show such great hostility. We are not in the same company with those people just now. We don't care about the 100 million bounty on your head. Lafitte saw that Law didn't intend to follow him. He could not help but shake his head and smiled lightly. Strictly speaking, we just want to make a deal with you. What deal? Seeing that the other party finally showed a little sincerity in conversation, rather than pure teasing, Law finally relaxed a little and asked quietly. Lafitte repeats Ross's words to him in no uncertain terms. We can kill Doflamingo for you and the price you have to pay is to be part of us. Law's pupils contracted violently and his breathing became unstable. There is too much information revealed in this sentence. He never said that he would kill Doflamingo. How does the other person know that he wants to kill Doflamingo? And knowing that, that is to say, the other party knows all about his past, how do they know and what is their connection with Doflamingo? There are countless questions in his heart. 1 minute, 2 minutes. As time went by, there was silence in the dark lane. No one knows how long it took, but Law finally spoke. He didn't ask any questions that came up in his mind, but he only asked a single question. Are you serious about killing Doflamingo? Who is Doflamingo? He is the captain of the Don Quixote family. He is one of the 7 warlords of the sea, and before becoming a Shichibukai, he had a bounty of 340 million berries. Since Corazone's death, he has been gnawing his teeth and hiding the idea of revenge on Doflamingo deep in the heart. He knows that his strength is too weak. Doflamingo and Don Quixote family are like a mountain, crushing everyone beneath them. It will take him at least 10 years to kill Doflamingo. After hearing Law's words, Lafitte, who had been standing there calmly, finally smiled again. He knew that the mission had been completed. Instead of answering, he shook his wrist and from somewhere he suddenly pulled out a yellowish sheet of paper, which he lightly fluttered towards Law. It was a bounty poster and more specifically, Ross's bounty poster. No need to say anything. A bounty of 200 million berries can prove that they indeed have the required power to deal with the Don Quixote family. It turned out to be him. Law's eyes also glimmered at the moment he saw the bounty poster. Although he was in the North Blue underground world, he also has some information on the Grand Line. 7 warlords of the sea only has 7 people and Doflamingo is one of them. More than half a year ago, one of the 7 warlords of the sea was killed on the Grand Line. He still remembers clearly that the man who killed Crocodile was the one on the bounty poster. Ghost Hand Ross. In order to destroy Doflamingo, he does not care about his life. He is willing to die if he can take Doflamingo to hell with him. The only problem is that his life far less valuable compared to Doflamingo, so this deal seems to be a bit unreal. He doesn't feel that his existence deserves to be comparable with the Don Quixote family. If it wasn't for Lafitte's power that brought him great pressure, he would have already started to leave the room quickly, because who knows if the other party has cooperation with the Don Quixote family and intends to sell him to Doflamingo in a certain transaction. The value of the chips, bargaining material, is comparable, so it's a transaction. Law's gaze moved away from the bounty poster and fell back to Lafitte and he murmured, I don't have the equivalent chips that I can trade with you. That's right. Lafitte nodded. Even if you are a surgeon fruit user, you can't be compared to a 7 warlords of the sea, but that's Captain's decision. He seems to think you're worth more than that Shichibukai. And, this is a deal you can't refuse, unless you are willing to destroy your own chips, hee. At the moment when his voice fell, Lafitte standing there suddenly seemed to melt into the darkness and disappeared. He silently appeared on Law's right side and the red stick in his hand was lightly put on Law's shoulder. Law slowly loosened his grip on the handle of the sword. Not that he did not intend to resist, but that when he responded, Lafitte had already appeared less than a foot to his right and there was no room for resistance, so resistance was meaningless. Moreover, that's when Law realized that he did have the same chips that he had in his hands and could use for trading, derived from surgeon fruit. That is to say, when his fruit ability is developed to the extreme, it can give eternal life to others. Coast. Lafitte walked ahead and Trafalgar Law followed in silence. They arrived at the ghost shadow ship, which was parked on the shore. Lafitte jumped up and landed on the guardrail of ghost shadow ship, turning his head to Law. Do you need help? No need to. Law's 5 fingers moved and a strange hemispherical cover emerged. It opened a range of more than 10 meters. His figure flashed and appeared on the ghost shadow ship out of thin air. Even if he had seen this ability in the past, Lafitte still clicked, and this near-spatial mobility capability was not as powerful as it used in battle. Captain, the person you wanted to meet has been brought. Lafitte turned and looked at Ross standing in front of the deck. Ross responded, turned his head and looked at Trafalgar Law. There was no beating around the bush, and he calmly said, "Become a ship doctor for the Ghost Hand Pirates and I will level the Don Quixote family flat for you." Law watched as Ross stood there, dressed in a plain shirt and covered in an autumn cloak. He took a deep breath. After all, Ross had killed a Shichibukai. Even standing there, it brought him unprecedented pressure. After a few seconds, Law said, "Doflamingo is not so easy to deal with. The power and influence of the Don Quixote family have penetrated both Marine and the government." Ross slightly smiled and said, "You are right, they're not so easy to deal with. Even for me, it's a long-term plan to get rid of Doflamingo, but anyway, it is easier than you alone having to deal with him." Law was silent for a while and said, "When will you act?" After returning to the Grand Line. At this point, Law had no choice but to join the Ghost Hand Pirates. Even if he refused, he could not get off the ship. Even if Ross didn't mean to deal with Doflamingo, he had to agree first and plan later. And just as Law took a deep breath and was ready to promise, Ross suddenly heard a purr. What happened? Ross took Den Den Mushi out of his pocket. When he connected, Robin's voice came from the other end of Den Den Mushi, which was very low and had a solemn tone. "I met people from the government who are supposed to coming for us." Hearing Robin's words, Ross's face slightly changed and his tone became serious. "How are you now? Where are you?" "After tricking them twice, I temporarily escaped, but it's not clear how many of them are here. I'm now in Bylaw Street, East District." "Well, try to keep yourself safe." Ross is not very worried about Robin's safety. Her abilities are not so easy to grasp and the government wants to capture her alive. However, he did not want to encounter a scene where his subordinate was held on a gunpoint to make him surrender without a fight. After hanging the Den Den Mushi, Ross walked down the ship and said to Lafitte, "Let's go to the East District." "Understood." Lafitte nodded and followed Ross. Law looked at Ross and Lafitte, who were walking down the ship without paying any attention to him. He was slightly embarrassed and had a feeling of being forgotten. Just when he wanted to ask, he heard Ross's voice. "One of my crew members is in trouble. Please excuse me for a moment. You can stay here and wait, or you can leave at any time. It's not in the deal, but I will be responsible for every crew member I recognize and recruit, that's all." The voice echoed, and Law was slightly shocked. He looked ashore to find that Ross and Lafitte had completely disappeared. When he was coerced by Lafitte, his heart had already made some plans. He was not afraid of death, but if he died, no one would avenge Corazon, so he could not die. Even if Ross put forward some harsh conditions, he would eventually escape. However, Ross's attitude toward him was not the same as he imagined. So, stay or leave? Law fell into deep thought. East District Bylaw Street. This is a more prosperous area in the outer slums of the Augusta Kingdom. It can be regarded as an entertainment area. Many criminal organization members, local gangsters, and pirates often appear here. In a dark lane in the block, Robin put the Den Den Mushi in her pocket and calmly used her ability to spy on the outside situation. The members of the government's spy agency are completely different from Marines. In most cases, they're hidden secret operatives. It is extremely difficult to find them out from the endless stream of people, and she is in a very disadvantageous situation. And she had a brief encounter with one person before and recognized Marine's Rokushiki, which had been deployed by the other party, and immediately looked for an opportunity to dump the person, but the other party had no doubt confirmed her presence in the area. Robin did not act rashly. It was too dangerous to show up in this situation. It was better to stay where she was and wait for Ross and Lafitte to come and join her. 1 minute, 2 minutes, as time passed, Robin's nervousness did not ease, but grew stronger and stronger, because, for a few minutes, she could not find any spies from the world government from the crowd outside. The only advantage to her now is that she is hiding now and can use the ability of flower fruit, Hana Hana no Mi, to observe the street outside. However, about 7 minutes later, Something happened that made her feel a little heavy. A young man with a cap and a long nose appeared in the laneway, staring at the dark lane and suddenly said, "You are there, devil child, Nico Robin." The air sank into silence. After a moment of silence in the lane, Robin's voice came out of it. "How did you find me? Sound, I heard your breathing. You can fight against Bluno and you were able to seriously injure him. Your strength is stronger than reported in intelligence." The CP9 messenger Kaku stood at the entrance of the lane and calmly said, "Who are you?" Seeing that the other party did not immediately start fighting, Robin did not rush but tried to get more intelligence. She also wanted to know who the government sent. Kaku has absolute confidence in his own strength and does not mind revealing information to Robin. In fact, he has reached this level and does not need to hide anymore. As he walks into the lane, Kaku calmly says, "World Government Intelligence Agency, Cipher Pole Officer Kaku." Sure enough, CP Intelligence Agency. Robin did not show any surprise. She saw the other person coming towards her position. Now she was no longer hiding. Her arms were staggered in front of her. Dos fleur, clutch, in a shower of petals, Kaku's body suddenly grew a pair of arms, tightening his neck and body and trying to instantly twist his neck. However, Kaku did not panic, but stood in the same place, letting those arms that grew out exert their strength and whispered calmly, "Tekai, iron body." In an instant, all the muscles on his body were tight, as if they were turned into iron, and it was difficult for Robin to twist his neck. Kaku calmly looked at Robin and said, "You almost hurt Bluno, but it will not work on me. My strength is 3 times that of him."